there or up north. Not sure where it's at, but all right. So, um, what happened? We're still here, but
It's like
we're
a
it's like
gluttons for punishment.
yeah, right. We're still here. What's going on? But it was funny because I told Alan, I was like, man, all right, I was like, is that not, even though we're not necessarily looking at it, but I was like, is New Year of Trees, is that even biblical? I was like, is that, if you count 50 days back from now, we're looking at like the 17th, which is like a day before Hanukkah. And we were just talking about, getting into it, like what could it be? And then come back Alan next day with a whole list of, everything to look into, dive deep. So it's pretty cool what Alan has to share. So we're going to go into some stuff with Alan, pretty much let him have the show and talk, and then just share some pretty cool stuff. Now, not saying we're not watching, and I know some people are like, I'm not looking at December yet. Of course, all eyes December 7th. I mean, excuse me, November 7th, 8th, 11th. I get it. I want it. We'll watch. But we got some pretty cool stuff that points to kind of like the last possibility, right? Is that what we were saying? The last
It's
possibility.
amazing how many times we could think it's the last possibility.
Yeah, yeah.
But
But yeah,
having said that,
it
in
ha-
the 70th year,
it
it
has to be.
will
Yeah,
end.
exactly.
Yeah, it absolutely has to end. And I do believe that's what we're going to see tonight. I know, when we were first talking the other day, even for myself, you know, I turned 50 on November 3rd. So even though the first came and went and the second, I was still hopeful for the 50 on November 3rd because I thought, well, hey, I got the revelation of 50, then 14 years, and then the 50th Jubilee. So there was our brother Michael out of, I think it was our brother out of Australia, Michael. He had said something, and I thought, oh, is it possible being the one through the Holy Spirit, having received that one thing with 50, maybe the connection is 50. And I was hopeful till that day. But then I was wallowing. Then I spent most of that day and the rest of that day into the evening uh, just bitching and complaining to myself and thinking the Lord was listening. And
That's I was with my sinus headache. That's what I was explaining before we got on. It was the worst it could be for Monday and Tuesday. Tuesday being the worst I've ever had a sinus headache, and I was just like, why are we still here? This is killing me. Let's go. But
That's right.
I couldn't even like gripe or pray or read because it was so bad.
Yeah.
But it's okay.
Glad I don't have a heart condition.
And
Yeah.
I think when we get going here, that's where I think I'll start is in not so much a heart condition, but why we're gluttons for this. And it's not that we're gluttons for it. It's that aching yearning within, and that's what drives us. That's what drives us is that aching, that yearning to just say, Lord, all we want to do is be with you. Let's come and get yours and let's go be with you. And that's what we want. And Paul talks about that in Romans 8. And I think once we get going, we'll talk about that. But, um, you know, and you can't help but understand too that it's the spirit in you that keeps pulling you to look. And I mean, if you didn't have the spirit in you, you wouldn't care. Why would you even bother? He's preparing people. He's got them watching. He's got them seeking. They're being diligent. And that's what you're going to find out today. That just when we thought there was nothing else we could possibly consider again, well, it's coming full circle. And what you're going to see is, I was thinking about Ed, our brother Ed. I gave him a comment, I think it was yesterday, on one of his posts over on the Ministry Revealed forum. And it was about the fact that John 7 is going to be revealed in the big picture now. And for Ed, that was an issue, right? Because we, in the open books that have been revealed, the Gospel of John is absolutely 100% one of the open books in chapters to years that are revealed. It's not even a question. We know it like the back of our hand. It's true. And so, with that being the case, we had an issue. And that's why Ed was like, all this looks great. We've got the sun, we've got the moon, we've got the stars, we've got the 70th, we've got the year's end, we've got all these things. And all these things I was telling my wife. And I'm thinking, what on earth could we possibly have missed? Well, when you pause for a moment, we didn't have John 7. And John 7 is important to us. It's important for us to understand being the end of the 7th year. And I would always try to justify it as if, well, if it's past, well, then maybe it was relating to something that started the year so that we can understand the year that we were in, coming from tabernacles or so forth. And when we were at this point last year, if you remember, we knew that from this point forward, or at the time of Hanukkah, which is a second tabernacles to the Jews, we spoke about it. And when the time came and went, when Hanukkah was passed, what did I say? Don't worry about it until at least June. So for 6 months, we weren't looking at any dates. We were just digging into scripture, going further. And in that process, we got more clarity of the 2 months off. It is true. It's 2 months off. The beginning of the year is supposed to be in Sivan or / Taurus. And then along the way, we also got the revelation just, recently about the moon. And so then we got the stars, we got the sun, we got the moon. And when we had the stars, the sun, the moon, the open books, the gospels, all of these things, we thought, man, this Lord, what else could there be? Well, one thing within the revelation of the gospels was John's connection. So what we're going to see is not taking away any of those things, but you're going to realize that we needed to understand those things to be able to bring John 7 back into the picture. And you're going to see that for the last 7, 8 years, at least, at minimum, it could have never been possible, and it won't be possible for the next several years. And I'm going to show you, as I was pondering these things, so what had happened was my wife was out of town for the week too. She got back yesterday, and she was gone for work. And so I was in the garage, 10 o'clock kid on November 3rd. I was like, forget it, whatever. And I was humming and hawing and just disappointed, right? Not angry in that sense, but just really disappointed. And so you guys know my little hut that I have in the garage that I built with my heater on because it's freezing here now, early winter. And I was in here for like an hour and a half, just not my computer, nothing like that, and just pondering and complaining and talking to the Lord, just in prayer, and things started coming. And I the first thing that started again was John 7, because my complaint was, Lord, all of these things, right down to the moon at what appeared to be right at the last minute. What on earth could it possibly be? And I was in here for like an hour and a half, and it took like 45 minutes to an hour before I was settling down and I was starting to consider these things. And that's when John 7 came back to my thoughts. And I started considering John 7 again. And as I started looking into John 7 again, and as I started just going through it in my mind, it started to dawn on me. And I said, well, wait a second. Why did Jesus show up in the midst of the Jews' Feast of Tabernacles? First of all, there's only one Jews' Feast of Tabernacles, and it's Hanukkah. But guess what? Do you know why he showed up in the midst of it? We'll see that today. We'll go into that. We'll go into all the details of that, because in no other year for several years past and several years forward will it be possible for him to show up in the midst of it. And why was it important for us this year to also get the understanding of the sun and the moon? Because without it, we would have never truly understood when Christ was born and when John was born. We would have never understood that the summer solstice is John the Baptist's birth, and his circumcision was on the 8th day after the 7 days of Passover. And Jesus was born at tabernacles, true tabernacles, at the winter solstice, the circuit of the sun, and he was circumcised on the 8th day. And those are the two that we have with the circumcision on the 8th day, and they're back to back. One of the mysteries had always been, well, which one do we go with, right? The bride is the John typology in Luke chapter 1. So does the bride represent the 8 days connected to John's portion, being in, at the summer solstice time, which is something we were looking at, which was one of the main reasons we didn't look for the last 6 months from December of last year or the start of January. We weren't bothering looking at a specific date time frame until June. And we realized that the Lord wasn't sharing with us that that's when it all starts. He was showing us that that is his start of the year. Now, it's the 15th day. Remember, it's the 15th day of the first month at the solstice, and it's the 15th day of the 7th month at the solstice. And these were things that we needed to understand, but we also needed the moon. There was no way to understand that it was actually the 15th day without understanding how the moon is off every single month, and how the Jews compensate for it, and how they're either over or they're short every 2 to 3 years. And now we've proven that. So we can show that it's solstice to solstice, unleavened bread to tabernacles, first month to 7th month. And without that, we could not have understood how John 7 connects. So none of those things are thrown away. They all built into the picture. And a lot of these things that we're going to talk about, we've shared last year. That's why we were so committed to it even last year, because we saw this time frame of 50 days. But you know what we recently did? We spoke about the year's end a lot, right? The 4 places the year's end shows up in relation to, like, Exodus 34:22, Psalms 19. And when we taught on this, so when I was recently teaching on this, I was showing how all 4 of the times that it shows up relates to the year's end as the turn of the year. And the reason was because of the 50-day count. Okay, it was because of the 50-day count. But if you remember a video we did like a year and a half or so ago, that was called the one with Tekufa. So the turn of the year, that word in the Hebrew is called Tekufa. And the word Tekufa had what? Do you remember, Mike?
Oh, my brew was up. Go ahead.
It had 2 spellings.
Oh, yeah.
One of them means the circuit of the sun, and the other one means a completion of a period of time. 2 of them relate to the circuit of the sun, and 2 of them relate to the 50th day. They weren't all 4 of them relating to the 50th day, but all 4 of them were a year's end. 2 of them were at the turn or the circuit of the sun, and 2 of them are at also a year's end, but it's a completion of a year of not the circuit of the sun, but of a completion of a period of time. And we'll touch on that today too. So it's going to be jam-packed, guys. We've got so much stuff we're going to go into. Hopefully I'll remember most of the things I want to go into, but John 7 will make Ed happy, because we're going to see how it's covered. Now, are we going to see everything like perfectly connected? And what I mean by that is when we consider the 50-day count. When you do the 50-day count, it would be like from the very beginning or the day before Hanukkah. And it takes you 50 days to actually, it's not the day before Hanukkah, by the way, Mike. When you do the count properly, when you understand, and I'll show it tonight, you'll see it takes you to the 50th day, which is New Year of Trees. And if you guys remember last year when we spoke on these things, the reason we spoke on these things is because it's exactly 50 days from the beginning of Hanukkah to the New Year of Trees. And the New Year of Trees is a year's end. And so it was exciting for us because the whole Tekufa thing was about the circuit of the sun in 2 places. And the other Tekufa reference was the end of a period of time. Excuse me, a lapse of time. So it was all there, except obviously it wasn't yet the 70th year. And second of all, where Hanukkah was not in the right place yet. I'm going to show you historically when Jesus said those words and did those things in John chapter 7. I'm going to show you the year he did it, and we're going to see if it was the same time. It's so awesome. It's not even kind of close. It's the exact same time, and it only happens this year. So we're going to see this. We're going to see how it counts out, how it plays out. And knowing that we're coming to the tail end of 70 years, like Mike and I were saying the other day, you know, there's a year's end at the Circuit of the Sun, but there's also a year's end in relation to the New Year of Trees. And the New Year of Trees, as we've taught about over the years, is important biblically because we've got it in Luke 13, where it was 3 years and then the fourth for the fig tree. We've got it in Luke 21, where it's the fig tree and all the trees. And of course, we have it in Leviticus 19, when it says, when you plant all manner of trees. So the fact that it's exactly 50 days later, I think is significant. So we'll start looking into those things. Anybody want to say anything? Anybody want to add anything? Any thoughts? Nothing? Nobody? Nothing?
But you're saying there's a chance we might go sooner.
I'll say the chance. It's not like it's not a far. What we were talking about with Alan, it wasn't a far. It's not like it's far off. It's just
Yeah.
maybe December.
We waited 6 months already
It might
from
be just
January
December
to June.
14th.
That's right.
December 14th ish.
Yeah,
Or-
it's December 14th to the 21st, and that's what you're going to see. Yeah, so now you guys know it's not that I wanted to hide it. I'm gonna help give the understanding of it, but it's the 14th to the 21st. Again, it's this thing where you're going to see scriptures that show, as we know, 7 days before for the wedding, and then him coming, you know, as a bridegroom ready to run a race at the Circuit of the Sun.
Oh, hold that
But
thought
at
real
this-
quick. Yolanda's in the house. She's not sleeping. She made it. Yay, Yolanda. Okay, keep
Where
going.
is she?
She's
She's watching on YouTube.
Yeah, Lon Gracie. Anyway, I had
Hello,
to call,
Yolanda.
had to call her out. Okay, go ahead.
So, it's this thing that we've talked about in the past. You know, this 7 days before and then 7 days after. That when he returns on the 8th day. Well, you're going to see this kind of happening again. I think over the next few weeks, couple, 3-4 weeks, whatever, it'll become more clear. I'm sure of it, just like it did last time. Because as I show this, you're going to see these relations to Enoch, the time of Enoch, what Enoch said, what was it Jasher spoke about, what the scriptures from Genesis to John to Luke. I mean, we're going to be touching all sorts of places, all showing the same period of time, breaking this down. And we have that same 7-day thing going on because of when he shows up.
Alan, really quick.
Yeah.
Did you say the 14th to the 21st or the 11th to the 21st?
14th.
The 14th to the 21st of December.
Because I just wanted to just throw out, because I just pulled up day counter, because remember my dream the last time? And it said 75 days.
Oh,
count
yeah.
from the year's end, because it took me
That's
to
right.
December 10th, 11th. But then there was a question on when the moon was actually sighted. And I think there
Oh,
were
yeah.
people that were arguing about the 27th, 28th. So I just did it from the 26th, but that would put us on the eve of the 13th if we did it that way.
So, yeah, maybe there's still some
So maybe
understanding
there's
to
still,
that
because
then.
remember I thought Hanukkah.
Mhm.
That's right.
And I was like,
Yeah.
well, interesting. Okay, I'm
That's
excited.
right.
I'm juiced.
Oh, yeah, it's not that I'm stalling. It's that I was quiet all day, man, because there was so much I was going through, and it's like it gets so overwhelmed in here that I just feel like I need to spew it out. And so if I wasn't doing the live show tonight, I was saying in the forum that I was just going to do a video regardless, because I can't hold on to this stuff for too long. Otherwise I just get quiet and I shut down, and my wife doesn't find it very happy. So I need to get it out. So I think that's the way the Lord designed it in me. So that's what we're going to do here. So you guys all set? Ready to get going, Mike?
Take care. Take it over.
All right. So let's start in this one thing that I was telling you guys earlier. When it comes to, sensing that we're gluttons for punishment, it's us who are making ourselves feel that way. But we know how close we are. We have been given so much revelation of mysteries that there is no doubt. You can't do this, as we've said before, hundreds and thousands of times throughout all of these scriptures and have all of these things line up. The entirety of this was to understand when. The 50 days have never changed. The 40 days of the Son of Man have never changed. The 14 years has never changed. The 50th Jubilee at the end has never changed. The portion for Mark, the portion for Matthew, the beginning part for Luke, the pre, mid, post, the 70 year, none of these things have changed. It has just been understanding where is his timeline. And so we're going to go through that again today, but I just want to start off with this. So, we've talked about this a lot of times, and a lot of you guys have gone through this as well, right? It says, for you have not received the spirit of bondage again to fear, but you have received the spirit of adoption, whereby we cry, Abba, Father. The Spirit itself bears witness with our spirit that we are the children of God. And if children, then heirs of God, and joint heirs with Christ, if so be that we suffer with him, that we may be also glorified together. Right? The suffering of this life, the rejection, the rebukes, the ups and downs, the health issues, everything in this life, because it's what? It'll be nothing compared to what's coming, right? For I reckon that the sufferings of this present time are not worthy to be compared with the glory that shall be revealed in us. For the earnest expectation of the creature, we know that's the other group, right? For the earnest expectation of the creature waiteth for the manifestation of the sons of God. For the creature was made subject to vanity, not willingly, but by reason of him who hath subjected the same in hope. Because the creature itself also shall be delivered from the bondage of corruption. This is the Mark group, right? Into the glorious liberty of the children of God. For we know that the whole creation groaneth and travaileth in pain together until now. That's what we're doing, right? We're also groaning as well. And this is us again. It goes back to the children of God, the sons of God. And not only they, but ourselves also, which have the first fruits of the Spirit, even we ourselves groan within ourselves, waiting for the adoption, to wit, the redemption of our body. For we are saved by hope, but hope that is seen is not hope. For man that seeth, why does he hope for? You see, guys, that's what this is all about. In fact, if I was going to do a video like this on my own, I was going to call it something about hope. The strength of hope or something like that. It's all about hope. Why? Because we haven't seen it yet. But we know it's there, and we're groaning within ourselves as those that are spirit-led, those as the sons of God, right? As co-heirs with Christ, if we continue to watch, if we continue to be diligently seeking him. And that's what we'll continue to do. So as much as we have those times when it goes down, he always brings us back up. As long as we love him, we're seeking him, and we're diligent, praying to him, he'll bring us back up. And that's what this is. That's what this is telling us. This is what we're going through with all of this. You see? But there's something that we have, not because, we're somebody special, but we've been given the open books. There's no other way to explain it. And these were mysteries that have been hidden since the beginning. And so with everything that we had already discussed, and all of these things that have happened, everything that is opened, all the revelations connected, and the recent sun, moon, and stars, and all of these things, it's a process that built on it. And right when we thought we were there at the end, we were missing John 7. And for those who don't know what I mean, why it's important is because we have what's called these chapters to years. And the book of John plays out in a typology within its chapters that have events within them that are prophetic in the is to come. So these are what's called the first 7 years, or what's called the quote unquote easy years, like Jacob. He was so excited, they flew by like days. And he was so excited to get his bride. Well, we've been expectant to be in this 7th year for a long time. But that's because we didn't yet understand where the true 70th year was. And the Jews ended the 7th year at Tishri on the Hebrew calendar, but we know they're 2 months off and then the moon's off. So we're still in it, but we cannot be in it for much longer. And these are the things that we're going to share in this final little bit of time that remains in the 70th year. Well, John chapter 7, you can now see why it's so important to us. We connected even with Ezekiel 33, Psalms 18, 118, Genesis 7, the 40 days, right? 7 days, they got in the ark, the door was shut, and the 40 days began. All of these things are to begin before the 14-year start. And then what do you get? Then you've got the 14 years of which, and this is why I want to show it with John, you'll notice for anybody that's new, in the Synoptic Gospels, in Luke, Mark, and Matthew, the resurrection story takes place in the final chapter of each one. But in John, for some strange reason, the resurrection story is in chapter 20. I remember when I first realized that, and having understood already for a while the 14 years and the big picture of the 21 years, when it dawned on me why the resurrection story was in chapter 20, because it's equivalent to the end of the 13th year of tribulation, 7 of seals, 6 of trumpets before he returns feet down at the end of the 13 years or start of the 14th year. The reason the resurrection story was in John 20 blew us away, because we know what it meant. And we know it's when he returns feet down at the end of that year to the start of the 21st chapter. It's when he returns feet down, the whole world will see him, and he'll deal with everybody in that final year. So it was a really wild story. And we've spent a lot of time really in chapters, well, even 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. And we could see the entire typology within it of Jesus being the vine, right? In chapter 15. He is the vine, and the vine relates to the grapes, and it's talking about the 144,000, and he's going to be their friend. And there's nothing better than a friend lay down his life, because we know something that's going to take place in the 7 years of trumpets, which is to the Matthew portion. And all of it has been laid out, and we have seen the Gospel of John opened in ways that blew us away. So we know it's part of the open books without question. As much as I know the revelation of the Gospels, as much as I know the 14 years and the big picture, I know the open books that have been revealed as well. And John is one of them. And it's one of the biggest ones, along with like Zechariah. So what was it in relation to the Jews' Feast of Tabernacles? Well, at first, it says that, he was with his brothers. So not his brothers in Christ, but his actual brothers. So it says, and after these things, Jesus walked in Galilee. So remember, he was in Galilee. So he's up, in the northern part. He's not in Judea. And it says, now the Jews' Feast of Tabernacles was at hand. This has always been something that has been picking at our brain. We've done studies on it. We've talked on it. What is the Jews' Feast of Tabernacles? Because clearly it's not the Lord God's Feast of Tabernacles, because it says the Jews' Feast of Tabernacles. If we go to Leviticus 23, we know that it says these are the Lord's feasts. So why would Jesus call them the Jews' Feast of Tabernacles? Okay, so right off the bat, we know that the Jews' Feast of Tabernacles, everybody has done studies on this in the past, relates to Hanukkah. Hanukkah, it's the dedication of the lights. Jesus is the light. He's at the bottom, right? John, remember in John chapter 3, John had to decrease, Christ had to increase. And I talked about this in the last video, where this confusion and this debate as to where John was born compared to where Christ was born has confused people on these two sides for a long time. And we've revealed in the revelation of the sun with the moon how they actually both come together. Some people, and myself included in the past, believe John could have been born at the time of Passover, and then that would have put Christ born at the time of Tabernacles. 6 months apart, you've got 7 days of unleavened bread, and then the 8th day John would have been circumcised. Then you've got Jesus, the 8th day is born, the 8th day is circumcised. That's the bigger, more important one, which is new beginnings at the 8th day of Tabernacles. And it seemed like it was pretty obvious. But then when you get to John chapter 3 and you see about the Son, and you see that John had to decrease and Christ had to increase, well, then you can start to see an argument for John being born at the time of quote unquote where they believe Pentecost was, and you could see Jesus being born in December at the time frame of Hanukkah, because both of them would be at the time frame, in and around the time frame of the circuit of the sun. So that's why there was always these two sides of the story. Well, in the revelation of the stars and the sun being revealed 2 months off in relation to the stars, and the count of the moon always being off, and we can now prove where the moon is supposed to be, well then, with both of those or all of those revelations put together, we were able to bring both sides together and show that it is exactly at the circuit of the sun, in the summer solstice and at the winter solstice, John and Jesus, and that both of them are in fact at Passover and at Tabernacles. So it was a big deal. We needed to understand this, and we've solved another mystery. The Spirit has been leading the entire storyline. And when we look here into Hanukkah, you see what happens is people would just say, well, then was he born at Hanukkah? Or was he born at Christmas? Right? Because it's in the time frame. So people would generally say, well, no, it was Hanukkah. Well, but it wasn't Hanukkah. You see, Hanukkah with the Hebrew calendar is always moving. Why? Because of the moon. So I have people try to come against the 2 months off, but they don't understand the movement of the moon. And so what they tell you is they're going to say, well, what about the blood moons? What about the blood moons in what is it, 14, 15? What about the blood moons in, what was it, the last ones? You know, what about those blood moons? How do we account for those? Well, right off the bat, what can we say? The moon's in the wrong place. You realize that the Jews know that they're off. They know their calendar is off. They know the moon is in the wrong place, because when they wait 3 years before quote unquote adding a month, they're not adding a month, they're catching up from 3 years of being behind the moon. So how on earth is that actually lined up that it was significantly supposed to mean something? To the Lord God, it was in the wrong place. So when you understand this movement of the sun with the moon and with the stars, it brings this clarity that we're talking about here today. Because when it comes to Hanukkah, who else do we know is connected to Hanukkah? Enoch's connected to Hanukkah. In fact, Enoch's name is from Hanukkah, or Hanukkah comes from Enoch's name. It's a portion of his name. But in relation to it, it was the Maccabees, and it was from the destruction of the temple, and they rebuilt the temple. They're not rebuilt it, they repaired the temple, and they rededicated it, because it was like, what, 3 years or something like that, that because of the attacks and the devastation, they couldn't observe in the temple. They couldn't celebrate the Feast of Tabernacles. So when they rebuilt it, it was done at the time of Hanukkah. They made it an 8-day dedication, and it was called Second Tabernacles. It was a replacement for tabernacles at that time, because they hadn't had one for 3 years. And that's what it was all about. So when they say the 25th of Kislev, well, that was the reason for this 25th of December for Jesus's birth. But what I want you guys to see is Hanukkah this year. Hanukkah this year is celebrated from Monday, December 19th to Monday, December 26th. And some people are going to say, no, it's not. It's on Sunday. No, it's not. That's the evening. That's the evening portion. Okay. This isn't Hanukkah, it's the evening. It goes from evening to evening for the Jews, right? So to them, the daytime portion is the day, and it starts on the 19th of Hanukkah. And I'll show you here, even when you look at it, you see right here. So I just typed in when the Jews will celebrate Hanukkah 2022, and it's right here. In the evening of December 18th to the evening of December 26th. All right. So just to be clear, everybody can understand, it goes really, I mean, if you're just looking on a strict square, we're looking from the 19th to the 26th. That's true Hanukkah. So in understanding this and looking at John and the Feast of Tabernacles, where he says it's the Jews' Feast of Tabernacles that's at hand, he's actually talking about Hanukkah. And we know that he's talked about, he went up to a time at Hanukkah as well. So he went there more than once. And in this, you're going to see a lot more detail than we had really grasped before, because what do we know now about the circuit of the sun? We know it's one of the what? Year's end. It's the turn of the year. It's Jesus's birth. So if you remember what we were saying earlier about, we know that Luke is in order, and what Luke means when he says that is in Luke chapter 1, 2, 3, and 4 is the escape of the bride of Christ connected to the 8 days. Then we've got Jesus coming back in at the time to start his 40 days. Luke chapter 3 is when he comes at the end of seals, at the end of the 6th year of seals, and it's a time of preparation and establishing. This is important to understand, because I'm going to blow you away later with something that's important to understand, because when Jesus was baptized, John was still around. We've done teachings on this, right? John was still around, and John had to decrease and Christ had to increase. So in Luke chapter 3, which is also the typology of when he comes at the end of the 6th year of seals, and there's that 7th year of seals that takes place before what? Before the first beginning of trumpet starts, and then he's got about 3.5 years of his ministry. That's what it was when he was here the first time. His ministry was officially about 3.5 years, but technically it was really about 4.5 years. And it was the revelation of the end of days that revealed the true understanding that there was this year that was still in the beginning of it. And why? Because John was still around. John had to decrease, Christ had to increase. Did it happen right away? No. We know that John was still around for about 2 months before he was arrested. So Jesus in the wilderness, it was 40 days. Then he starts going to baptize with others, right? And others are baptizing with Jesus. And they give a report to John, and they say, hey, that guy over there that you baptized, he's over there doing it with some other guys. And John says, yeah, that's okay. That's really the one everybody should be going to, right? And then John gets arrested. And when John gets arrested, he's in prison for about 10 months. So you have what? About 2 months and approximately 10 months. He was still on the scene for 1 year before he was beheaded. So as long as John was on the scene in any capacity, because in history, even in other writings, I think it's Josephus and others talk about John in the time he was in prison, there was people going and standing outside the prison constantly every single day, people out there like picketing, and protesting John being in prison. So people were still looking to John. It wasn't until John was all gone that they said, uh-oh, who do we have? Well, John told us this guy. And so everybody started looking to Jesus. It was 1 year. And it's no different than what I'm going to show you with this story. Because in Luke chapter 3, we see that Jesus began to be about 30 when he was baptized. Okay? He began to be about 30. Well, that doesn't mean he was almost 30. That means it's right in the time frame of when he was 30 that he was baptized. The church will tell you, I think, January 6th, they say, was his baptism time. I think it was right. I think it was closer. I think it was during the time of Hanukkah, at the time of his birthday. What do we know about that? Well, we know when we looked at this in the past, how did we establish this chart of counting the Sabbath years, the Shemitah years. We established it first by understanding that there are two sets of 7 years of seals and the 7 years of trumpets left in the end of days before the final Jubilee. And so I went back and I just said 7, 7, 7, 7, 7 to take us all the way back to the time of Christ. When we did that, we also realized that there were 4 years, like Leviticus said, before they can begin to count where the food, where the fruit and so forth for the trees could be theirs to start taking from. And Israel came into the land in 1948. And what happened? It wasn't until after the 4th year and the start of the 5th year that they started a new Shemitah cycle. We'll come say hello. Oh, thanks, man. My coffee. So again, not only did it line up with the 14 years, with the 7 that were left, it revealed the 4 years of Leviticus before the new cycle started for themselves. So in this new cycle, we count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We go all the way to 70, and look at where it is, exactly where we are. So again, this is why we've been harping. We know that we're in the 70th year, but we followed it all the way back. And our brother Ivan did this for me because I am not an Excel person. I am just a scripture person, man. That's all. So when we followed it all the way back, we found out his birth, when he was conceived. And what did we find? That when Jesus began to be about 30, which is exactly what we read about in Luke chapter 3, when Jesus was baptized, you see this goes from Tabernacles. So where does this really go? Where does the count of the year really go from? Well, it would be from Tabernacles of 28 AD to Tabernacles of 29 AD. Well, when was he born? At True Tabernacles, at the circuit of the sun, which is the winter solstice. And he began to be what? 30. So in 28 AD, he began to be 30. How were we able to prove it? Well, not only just by following the 7s, the Shemitahs going back, we were able to prove it by Luke chapter 3. Because in Luke chapter 3, it said it was the 15th year of Tiberius Caesar. And the 15th year of Tiberius Caesar, we can prove was 28 AD. And how do you prove it? Because coins of Tiberius Caesar with his wife on them, that he had minted for his wife, were minted in the 16th year of Tiberius Caesar in 29 AD. So if it was 29 AD, it was the 16th year of Tiberius Caesar. Then Luke chapter 3, in the 15th year of Tiberius Caesar, and Christ began to be about 30, would have been 28 AD when he became 30. It's right. It's all right here. It's listed just by going back in counting the Shemitahs all the way back, because we know there are 2 that remain, and it all ends at the end of 70, and then you've got 7 and 7 remaining. So why is this important? Well, you're going to find out, because this goes from Tabernacles to Tabernacles, okay? Or you can say from winter solstice to winter solstice. So 1 year later, there was a period of time now where Jesus starts to show up on the scene. Remember, Jesus was already on the scene. Jesus was already working with his disciples. He was already doing things, but it wasn't until John was no longer in the picture that everybody turned to Jesus. That would have been sometime after that time frame of him turning 31 years old. So it would have been in the time of 29 AD, okay, like around the solstice time, give or take, of 29 AD, at which point Jesus would have turned about 31 years old. You're going to see why this is important, because these are the things that we could have not understood without the sun and the moon and the stars, and understanding these differences, coming back now full circle to bring John 7 into the picture of everything else that's been revealed, to bring it right to the end. So now we know this Jews' Feast of Tabernacles. We can understand, we know there's only one time a year that it could be, and it's Hanukkah. So he says in verse 3, his brethren therefore said unto him, depart hence and go into Judea. Okay, why? Well, because he was in Galilee. So first of all, you see, we know that he was in Galilee. Where was Galilee? Okay, he was in Galilee. So if you want to see where Galilee is, it's up in here. So it's just, it ends right around under Nazareth in here is where Galilee is, all in this section here. Well, Judea is down here, and Jerusalem and Bethlehem, all that's down here. So they still had to make the trip. And that's why it says that the Feast of Tabernacles, the Jews' Feast of Tabernacles was at hand. And so they go on to say that and go into Judea, that thy disciples also may see the works that thou doest. So it's almost like nobody had really seen who he was yet. They've heard things about him, but nobody has really seen anything that he's done yet. It's kind of interesting because obviously, I mean, all the way back at the beginning of John, or early in John, when he was baptized, he was doing things, he had disciples, but here he's still not hanging out with them. It's like he was gone, he was up in Galilee doing his own thing for a bit. He was doing some things, but the world never knew who he was yet. So his brothers are telling him, hey, why don't you go show yourself now? Let them see the works that you do. And in John 7, verse 4, it says, for there is no man that doeth anything in secret. So these are his brothers telling him, hey, you're doing all these things in secret. What are you doing all these things in secret for? You need to be showing yourself openly. So again, more evidence that it wasn't yet being made known everywhere. Why? Because to this point, John had been still around. Now he had to start making himself known. And it says, that doeth anything in secret, and he himself seeketh to be known openly. If thou do these things, show thyself to the world. Again, proving prior to this, he wasn't making himself known everywhere. It was still in secret. What does he tell us about in secret? No man does anything in secret, right? You light a candle. If he's the light, what is he doing these things in secret for? He has to now present himself as the light of the world. And we see that kind of conversation, even with this word where he's in secret. We see this like in Luke 11. And where do we see it? It's directly tied into the story of Jonah. When he said he's going to be as Jonah was, which was a 40-day warning to them, the very next thing we see is the light in you. And he says, you don't stick it in a secret place, right? See, you don't conceal it. See, same word. You don't conceal it and put it in a hidden place. You got to bring the light for everyone to see it. Well, he was still doing these things in secret, and his brothers are telling him, hey, it's time to let the whole world see it. When's the connection? 40 days. There it is again, connected to 40 days. Go back to John 7 and continue in verse 5, and it says, for neither did his brethren believe him. Okay, because his brothers still didn't believe him either. Then Jesus said unto them, my time is not yet come, but your time is always ready. The world cannot hate you, but me it hates, because I testify of it, that the works thereof are evil. Go ye up unto this feast, okay, unto this feast. I go not up yet unto this feast, for my time is not yet full come. Okay, so his time is not yet fully finished. The period for him to go isn't complete. And what do we have to remember about this? Prophetic. We are reading John in the prophetic understanding of the is to come. And it's prophetic like bananas. It is everywhere prophetic. So he's saying, my time is not yet come. The world's not ready. And he says, It's still not yet fully come. It's not fully the time yet. And then he goes on to say, when he had said these words unto them, he abode still in Galilee. But when his brethren were gone up, then went he up also unto the feast, not openly, but as it were in secret. He's still doing things in secret. Why? Because his time isn't yet full come. But he was already baptized. He already had some disciples, but he wasn't hanging out with them. It wasn't being exposed to everybody yet. Hello. Do we know of a group that's kind of being kept in secret? Is there a group we know of that the Lord is going to bring open to the world when he comes and he's no longer secret? We know that, right? In 1 Peter 1:5, who are kept by the power of God through faith unto salvation, ready to be revealed in the last time, in the end of days. We know who this group is, right? This is the group that their faith comes to an end. Why? They don't need to hope anymore. This is what we were talking about at the beginning. There's no need for hope in this group anymore, because when they're going to be revealed in the end of days, it will be with Christ when he starts his 40 days. So you're starting to see a connection that when he comes to reveal himself in that sense, when he comes to be that light, there's going to be those disciple workers that will be with them as well. Back to John 7.
And I love that. I love that, the end of our faith, man. That's like a perfect.
That's right. And we can see that that's a group still on the earth. That's a group of his workers, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, imagine that. You see, what we have now, what the whole world has right now in Christ, is hope. It's always hope. Could you imagine if we didn't have hope? Why would you even bother doing this? Why would you bother considering any of it without hope? It's all hope in him. It's all hope. And that's why it said what? There's no need for hope. If you've seen a thing, there's no longer any need for hope. Well, those guys will have seen it at that point, just like 1 John says. And once you've seen them, there's no need for hope.
Exactly. And this
Because they'll
isn't
be
like
with them.
hope, the end of your faith. And I love saying this. It's not that faith when you read this. This is saying like when you die, you've reached the end of your race. No, this is people coming to the end of their faith, right?
That's right. People still alive in the flesh coming to the end of their faith. And why? Because they're the workers that are going to be here during seals. Yeah. They're the ones from Luke 24.
Comment there, if that's all right. If you look in Strong's, faith can only be given to you from God. It only comes from God. You can't have it yourself.
That's right. Yeah, but the whole world has hope, right?
Yeah, the whole world has faith right now, right? Well, not everybody.
But did you say
no,
faith?
No, but no. I mean I don't mean faith. I mean hope.
Ah, okay.
If nobody on earth had hope, everybody would be killing themselves.
But the one in 1 Peter, does that say?
It says faith. It's faith. It's the end of your faith.
Yeah. The end of your faith.
Which comes from God, which means
you're
not getting faith from God.
Well, we won't get into that right. Yeah, I'm not sure on that. But get back to it, Alan. I'm sorry. I interrupt you anyway.
We'll probably go back into touch on that in a bit. We can bring it up again then. So here he is about to show himself, fully come. Here he was still in secret. Then the Jews sought him. Verse 12. And there was much murmuring among the people concerning him, for some said, he is a good man. Others said, nay, but he deceiveth the people. Verse 13. Howbeit no man spoke openly of him for fear of the Jews. Now, where do we hear that of? Where did we hear of that? And this is where I'm going to, you see, as I was telling you guys in the beginning, most cases, it appears that when he comes at this time, that it's the beginning of the 40 days. And it seems pretty obvious, right? Because Luke chapter 1, you have the 8, he comes on the 8th day, and it's the beginning of the 40 at his birth typology. So it would clearly seem that when he comes at the circuit of the sun, which is as a bridegroom ready to run a race because he's been with his bride and now he's ready to run a race, it seems like it's the 40 days. But what I'm going to show you here is it kind of seems like maybe it's even the beginning of 50. So I'm not going to split hairs on it, but I do want to bring it to your attention. And where we see it is in John chapter 20. Because as you guys know, for those that are newer, in John chapter 20, I just explained how it was like the end of the 13th year of trumpets, of tribulation, but it also plays a storyline that starts the 50 days. So it starts the 50 in John 20, it goes into Luke 24, and then it goes into Acts chapter 1 and 2 and so forth. And so what do we see here when he shows up to the disciples? In John 20, verse 19, it says, then the same day at evening. So this is the evening of day 1 of 50, being the first day of the week, when the doors were shut, where the disciples were assembled for fear of the Jews. So when I saw that, I was like, it seems like it's the beginning of 50. But again, I'm just saying this as a side note, because we're not going to have complete clarity yet as to whether it's the beginning of 50 or the beginning of 40, which is the 8th day after the wedding. I still believe it's the 8th day after the wedding, and that was just a close comparison, but it's open. And that's why I say from the 14th to the 21st, the time frame of the escape of December. So let's keep going and see what it says. Verse 14, now about the midst of the feast, Jesus went up into the temple and taught. And the Jews marveled, saying, how knoweth this man the letters, having never learned? So where did he show up? He showed up in the midst of the feast. So this would be approximately how much later from when he was baptized? Give or take about a year, right? It was about a year, because he was baptized. John was on the scene, so he was still doing things quietly and in secret, but there was some word out about who he was and these things that he was doing, but he had not yet made himself revealed to the world. He still didn't let his light shine because John was still around. Now John is gone. This is that typology. John is gone. And now he's about to go and make himself known to the world. But we know also, as we're going to read in a little bit, he tells them he's only going to be here a short time. And what he does and why they're against him was because of one thing that he did. One thing. One thing. Why would it only be one thing? If he was around for a while already doing all these things, why is it only one thing? You're going to see, because it perfectly lines up with everything we're talking about. So first of all, he shows up in the midst of the Jews' Feast of Tabernacles. So he's showing up in the midst of Hanukkah. Well, look at this. In December 2022, where's the midst of Hanukkah?
Winter solstice.
Winter solstice. The winter solstice. Do you know, watch this. Let's go to 2021. We were looking at it last year, but guess what? Where was the midst of the winter solstice? Was down here. It wasn't even in it. What about 2020? I won't go into all the years, but what about 2020? Nope. It's over here.
Nope, you have to go into 116 different years.
Yeah. You have to go into a lot of years to actually get in the midst, because the word midst does mean middle, and it does mean middle. However, in John 7, it said about the middle. All right. So it said about the midst, which is the middle, be halfway over. Wasn't that kind of funny too? Because what is halfway over?
The circuit of the sun.
Hello. It could only happen in the year that Hanukkah has the circuit of the sun in the midst of it. So now he would be turning what? Well, now he's coming to reveal himself to the world.
As that light, yeah.
As the light, he's coming to reveal himself to the world.
At the darkest point of the year.
At the darkest point of the year, and it's dark for 3 days. Maybe that's the people's 3 days darkness, you see? So he's coming in the midst of the feast, on at the time of his birth, which would be about the year after he was baptized, which would put this in 29 AD. Want me to show you something? I told you guys I'm going to freak you out with one of these things. Check this out. In 29 AD, so this is the website is cgsf.org. I've used it over the years, and it converts the Gregorian and the Hebrew dates, and they can go back all of them. You know, sometimes if you use HeebCal or some of those, it doesn't have the adjustment for the 10 days and all that stuff and the changes. This one has it all. It's all computer generated, all instantly done. So this is 29 AD. This is one of the thoughts that I had when I was starting to put this together and starting to grasp it on the evening of the 3rd. And I said, wait a second. I wonder if I go back and check those dates between 28 and 30, 31, maybe that's a little bit too late, but 28, 29, 30 AD, and see where Hanukkah was, to see when Jesus actually said it. Well, I showed you in the beginning, when you followed the chart of the Sabbaths, we saw that it was the time frame of when he turned 30, which was 28 AD. So 1 year later, now John's dead, and Jesus is turning 31, which is at the circuit of the sun, and he's now coming to make himself known, which we know is connected to his birth, which is Luke chapter 2, the beginning of the 40 days. So what do you think it was in 29 AD when he, quote unquote, officially begins his ministry after the 1 year? Check it out. The Feast of Dedication, Hanukkah, was December 19th to the 26th in 29 AD. What is it in 2022? December 19th to December 26th, 2022. It's the exact same time. Let that sink in. It's the exact same time. So when he showed up in the midst of the Jews' Feast of Tabernacles in 29 AD, he showed up at the solstice. Now, why do you think he showed up in the midst? Because it was Hanukkah? Because it was Hanukkah? No, because it was Tabernacles. Remember, this is the beginning of Tabernacles. This is the 15th day of the 7th month. He showed up 1 year later from his baptism. John is dead. It's his birth, and it's actually true Hanukkah. And in 29 AD and in 2022, they're the exact same days of the week. That's awesome. That is awesome. Now, what about this word for Hanukkah? Let's go spend, we'll come back. We're going to spend more time in here as well. So let's go into this word for Hanukkah. Okay? We know, for example, the importance of Hebrews chapter 11 and Enoch. So with Enoch, we see in verse 5, by faith, Enoch, we've talked about this a lot, right? This is some of our favorite verses. By faith, Enoch was translated that he should not see death, and was not found because God had translated him. For before his translation, he had this testimony that he pleased God. But without faith, it is impossible to please him. So, of course, you need to have faith that he is God first, right? For he that cometh to God must believe that he is God, and that he is a rewarder. Remember this word, we're going to talk about it. He is a rewarder of them that diligently seek him. Who do you want to be? You want to be Noah being warned and part of that for 40 days? Or would you rather be Enoch, who's translated, right?
Can I just chime in and say we're diligently seeking him, not prophesying or date setting? The chat is killing me right now.
Let them say what they want, man. 5 years of dealing with
it. We're date revealing. We don't date set. We try to reveal dates. We study, right? This is what you do. You dig into scripture. You come into new understanding, new meaning, And does it reveal times? Yes, because it goes hand in hand when you're trying to understand things. So yes, dates pop up, and you're like, well, why is this date? Why could this date be the time we're looking at? Why could it not?
There's
And
a
that's
great
what we're
falling
doing.
away for a reason.
Hmm.
There's a great falling away. This is not for
That's
the
right.
faint of heart.
No.
This is
We're
not
living in
easy
the
for
Laodicean
anyone.
age for a reason. Yeah,
There's too many right now for the Lord to take. It's not his
that's
chosen.
right.
So let's just continue and let's be
Mm,
positive, guys, because this
yeah.
chat is not helpful.
And what's happening is there's these people that talk like that. I understand some people don't like looking at dates. What people who are new or who haven't followed the teachings do not understand is that every single time we're looking at a particular time, it is through revelation of scripture every single time. And more on top of that, and built on top of that, is with every passing time, more revelation has built on it over and over and over again. And that's why I started talking with this video, because what we're seeing today is the culmination of the end of 70 coming, and that we needed to understand the moon being 2 months, the sun being 2 months off, and the proper constellation starting, and that the moon was also clearly off track. And in fact, Enoch even told them it was going to be off. And we can now prove it to which day every single year without fail. So when somebody says, oh, these date setters, you have no idea what you're talking about in your baby thinking. That's what's happening. We are revealing his word in diligently seeking him. Do you understand what it said in 1 Peter 1? It said that the prophets, not that we're prophets, but that the prophets diligently sought the time that would be revealed when Christ came and that salvation would be brought. What are you going to say to them? They were a bunch of date setters trying to understand when Christ was going to show up. It's kid thinking. It's baby talk. Go back to drinking milk. Maybe you're not ready. That's not what we're doing here. We are in scripture. We are in the sun, the moon, the stars, which are his handiwork. And it is all revealed by his word. 5 years of building and building and building and building. And have we thrown away a bunch of stuff? Nope. We've just missed dates. Why did we miss dates? Because we were trying to understand where his 70th year was. And now in his 70th year, being able to prove we're in his 70th year, we've been trying to understand where. Sure, could you just continue to live your life in Christ and do the things that you're supposed to be doing and diligently seek him without understanding prophecy as it's been revealed here? Of course you can. I believe 144 million people are about to vanish. Do all 144 million people understand prophecy as it's truly to be understood? No. Well, then stay in your lane. This is our lane. This is, if you don't like it, leave. We are revealing his revelation for the time to come. That's what's going on.
And Jesus
Also,
rebuked
go ahead.
Jesus rebuked
Brian.
him for not knowing the time of his visitation too, in Luke 19:40, I believe.
That's right. Or even, what does he tell them in Luke chapter 12? Let's come back to Hebrews in a second. Let's just go to Luke chapter 12 real quick and see what he tells those people who don't watch. Okay, we know this, let your loins be girded about when you will return from the wedding. Of course, that's because he's gone for 7 days and then he's going to come back on the 8th. Blessed are those servants whom the Lord, when he cometh, shall find watching, and make them to sit down to eat, and will come forth and serve them. Sorry if you don't want to be served by the Lord and him coming and eating with you. I'll take this. I don't know about you.
Well, also talks
See,
about like the army of the 3,000 or the 4,000. I can't remember, but how they had to dwindle it all the way down to 300, just
that's right.
showing
Yeah,
that it's not only the Lord's timing, it's the Lord's count, not even on the days, but his count of his chosen.
that's right.
There's a time and
That's right.
season for everyone, and there's a
And
falling away.
that's right. And there are different parts to the body. This is a part of the body here in this ministry, in these ministries, and what we're doing. And some people just don't get it. Because of their lack of understanding, all they want to cry out is false prophet. Well, we're not prophets. We're diligently seeking him. You're date setters. Please explain where your problem is with date setting. Oh, well, my brother went all nuts because he couldn't believe the time never happened. Well, was he really watching? Was he really paying attention and diligently seeking the Lord? Was it because of us? Have we ever said, thus saith the Lord? Have we ever said the Lord said this to us? No. One thing that the Holy Spirit gave. That's it. The rest has been revelation through the leading of the Spirit.
That's why we did that video last week, right? Which was should we be watching for dates? Should we be looking at that?
That's right.
That's a perfect video to watch. But yes, it's exactly what we should be doing. Now, not everybody does it, right? Not everybody has to do that. There's plenty of different ministries. Some teach, some evangelize. There's everything. Some rebuke and exhort. But but this is what we do. We want to get into the Word and learn more. Like there's all these different channels out there where they have to experience something more, right? All these like prosperity or hyper charismatic groups where
we'll even think of dreams and visions.
They need a new dream or a new vision every different Sunday, and the Lord spoke to this, and they like, I want to hear the Lord speak to me because the Bible's not good enough. I need something fresh or something new. Right, and
do you know what happens in those? Why do they have hope?
I don't even know, man. It's just to me this like they're looking for something. Like they want
they want the easy road.
They want an easy road, but they're looking for something here and the now, right? Instead of looking for what's to come. But we look for something new and something fresh, but from the Word of God, right? We're trying to understand Scripture at a deeper level, right? Go read Proverbs. You'll find out there's four layers to the Bible in Proverbs, right? And we look for the understanding of the hidden things of God, right? That comes from searching Scripture diligently, and that's what we do. And with that comes, hey, God's letting us know here that there's an end time point that we're about to reach, and it says it's during this feast. We understand it to be during the Feast of Weeks, right? And they're like, oh, well, the Feast of Weeks is celebrated at the year's end. Wait, that's odd. Or observed at the year's end. So there's so many things that tie together, which does make us point out a certain day that, ooh, well, this is interesting. Oh, wait, we're 2 months off. Oh, well, there's so many things we build on. So that's what we do. And
hey, Mike, the dating app stuff started popping up. We're onto it.
Oh, there it is. Yeah.
All right.
Can I chime in here for a sec, Al?
Yeah, sure.
So I think, if you'd asked me this a year ago, I probably would have been one of those people. But it's the mentality of the people that come against us for the date setting. That comes from years of being taught that no one knows the day or the hour, right?
That's right.
And so because you have that in your head that no one knows the day or the hour, then why are you setting a date? Because no one can know the day.
That's right.
And I used to always think that because obviously that's in Matthew and Mark, right? That's why to me, Luke 12:40 is so important, right?
Yeah.
Because Luke 12:40 doesn't use the word day. And Luke is to us, right? This pre-trib. So that scripture is so important to me because when I talk to Christians and they bring that up, the first thing I do is I go over to Luke and point them to that and say, really? Well, how come it doesn't say day here? And they don't know, and they don't know why, right? But they have that mentality that you can't know the day, so that why are you setting a date? So I think that's important for people to know and understand that until you have the revelation of the three gospels, you won't be able to understand that.
That's right. But I'll say something to that as well, because I won't say all these people, but the majority of those people that do that, why do you think they're watching Mike's channel, Ministry Revealed sometimes? Because they're watching to find out when it's going to be. They're watching these other channels as well that talk about prophecy. And you know what's crazy about it is the other channels who don't have the understanding of the Gospels, the revelation of the Gospels, read from Matthew that says, of that day and hour knows no man, yet date set all throughout the year. That to me is pretty wild.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
They read from the scriptures that say nobody knows the day or hour, not the Son, not the angels. And then they spend the rest of the year giving you a date that it's going to happen. They don't understand harvest models. They don't understand when harvests are celebrated or observed. They don't understand that it all has to be before the end of the 70th year. You ask them about the 70th, they'll tell you 2017, 2018, but it's fine to go and follow those people. Give me a break.
And Matthew 24, First
with the grain of salt, because they don't know this, right?
Yeah. It is talking about post-trib. That's the funny thing too. What they use for the pre-trib is post-trib. Yeah.
That's
Anyways.
right.
That's why Luke 12:40 is so important.
That's right.
It's really super important to understand that. And there's 4 times where the Lord talks about that, 2 in Matthew, 1 in Mark, and 1 in Luke. And so until you understand what those 4 differences are because of the 3 gospels, you get yourself in trouble.
That's right. And that's what we're trying to say, right? Sometimes you have to make a stand. You have to be bold about these things, because people they'll just come and just be bullies. So you can make a stand when you understand. It's hard to make a stand and stand up against what they're trying to attack you with if you don't really know for sure what it is you're talking about. We know. I absolutely know what I'm talking about. I absolutely know the revelations that have been given, and they haven't changed in 5 years. They have built and built and built. And every time they've built, when we get to the next one, all of those other layers fit together with it. Every single time.
That's been the thing to say to people when they want to rebuke us. It's like it all fits. Just because we get it wrong doesn't mean it's wrong. It's just getting better day by day.
That's right.
Sorry to take you on this path. It's just like,
yeah.
Everyone was quiet that whole time too. So it's like you hit a nerve.
No worries.
But
Taylor.
it's okay. I know Mike likes to be a little bit more easy about these things, but it's just different personalities. And as the one leading the Ministry Revealed ministry, there are things that, and I've told this to Mike and to you guys before, there are things that we know that we know. Yep. If you're ever going to try to rebuke and stand against me, against the revelation of the Gospels and the 14 years in the open books, then be ready. Because you're going to have an earful of understanding being presented to you. And I'm going to listen to you say Matthew 24 for about 5 minutes.
In 1 Thessalonians 4 or whatever else. Yep.
That's right. So we can stand and have a debate if you'd like. But I've never had anybody come to me to disprove any of it in 5 years. So if you're ready, send me an email. It's at ministryrevealed.com. You'll find it. So now here's the thing, getting back to it, when we're talking about Enoch. And this kind of brings me back to the point of saying you're going to see 2 points in this, which is really interesting. We've been saying in this 50, when Jesus comes, is it the start of the 40, which it more so appears to be, or is it the start of the 50 when the bride is gone? And that's when he first shows up to the apostles and so forth. And it's still kind of hard to say. Well, when we look at Enoch, what do we know about Enoch? His name is from Hanukkah. And so we go to Enoch's name, which is from Hanukkah. And what do we know about Enoch? Enoch lived 365 days and he was gone. Well, if you go from the circuit of the sun to the circuit of the sun, it's 365 days. So 365 days would have to be in most likely Hanukkah, with his name matching to Hanukkah. And Jesus in 29 AD proclaiming it, which was the same date or will be the same date in 2022. But so when you see that, you might think, oh, well, maybe the escape is the 21st. Like I said, will it be the 14th? Will it be the 21st at the time of the circuit of the sun? Well, that makes you think that maybe the 50 is Jesus when he comes at the circuit of the sun. But now watch this. We have Enoch's name, which is Hanukkah, which means initiated, but it also means dedication, which is like Hanukkah, the dedication of the temple when they rededicated it. Hanuk. Well, look at what it means. Dedicate and what? Train up. Oh, wait a second. To train up, but it's also talking about him being translated. And when we read about Enoch, we read in the book of Jasher that when Enoch was taken and those that were with him, and they went to go see where they were last seen, they only found what? Snow, 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 snow. Well, in Canada, the snow came a lot early this year, but snow is connected to the time of Enoch's translation. Well, winter is also December 21st. And the Lord God goes summer to winter. So it would also make sense that Enoch was translated on the winter solstice. So again, at the beginning. So when you read it, it brings me back to thinking the beginning of 50. Yet in other places, it makes me think of after the wedding, after 7 days, like we saw in Luke 12, which is to the 8th day when he returns, which it kind of also appears it could be, because what do we know from the bride group? There's the workers of seals. And what are the workers of seals doing? Preparing. They're trained up. They're being trained. They're being prepared so that when the Lord comes after the wedding, like we read in Luke 12, and he knocks, they'll be ready and they'll open right away. And what does he do to them? He opens their understanding. And what do we know in 1 John 1? They will no longer need to ask anybody. Nobody will need to teach them anything because they will know. What does that all line up with? People being trained. So here we are again. Is it the beginning of 50 or is it after 7 on the 8th day? So this is what we're seeing here with the name of Enoch being Hanukkah as well. And that Enoch was taken on the 365 years. He lived 365 years, which are definitely a prophetic typology that'll play out as days. And the circuit of the sun would be a 365-year time frame. So I thought that was a good piece to share in there as well in relation to the 365. And in relation to Enoch. I think I had other stuff I wanted to show with Enoch.
I'm a little confused here, though. How are you getting now to the beginning of the 50 days being December 14th?
The 50 days being December 14th?
Yeah, you're saying 14th to 21st, right?
Yeah, because when Jesus comes, he starts his 40 days, right? So Jesus is showing up in John chapter 7 before the 14 years. He shows up in John chapter 7 and he's coming to what? Make himself known to the world. You know, he's not going in secret anymore. He's coming to shine the light. When he comes to shine the light, he's coming to start his 40 days. So what do we know about the 21st at the circuit of the sun? It's when he was born. When was he born? At the beginning of Tabernacles. So in virtually every case, him coming on the 21st at the circuit of the sun, at the solstice, is him coming at his birthday. And why is it important for us? Because of what we were talking about and we've taught in Luke chapter 1, 2, 3, 4. Luke chapter 1 is the escape connection. Luke chapter 2 is his 40 days. Luke chapter 3 is the typology when he comes at the end of 6 years of seals. And Luke chapter 4 is when he comes after the 6th year of trumpets. So when we come to Luke chapter 1, and we know the typology of John, and John is the spirit-filled one, like those who are witnesses, as John was a witness and so forth, spirit-filled. The bride is spirit-filled. They're the ones going to the third heaven, being taken first. And we see John is born, and then you've got the 8th day of his circumcision. We go to Luke chapter 2, and in Luke chapter 2, we have the birth of Jesus. So what do we have? We have the 7th, then the 8th day. We go to Luke chapter 2, and the 40 days begin. And what's the story about? It's the same type of story that we had from John chapter 20. It's the beginning of the 50 days. He breathes on them. He leaves and comes back after the 8th day. And when he returns, he meets the apostles one more time. And then he goes to Luke 24, and he's meeting with those disciples who follow him for 40 days. And then it goes to, of course, the last 3 days to the Holy Ghost. When we go to Genesis chapter 7, for yet 7 days, which is a typology of years, but also days. And then it says, and after 7 days. So after 7 days is like the wedding. After the 7 days, which means on the 8th day is again. On the 8th day, the door is shut and the 40 days begin. So this pattern is repeating over and over. So the question is, when Jesus is coming here on the 21st, is he coming on his birthday, which it is, and starting his 40 days? And if he is, then the 7 days earlier is the escape of the wedding.
Right. The reason I bring it up was because in the past, what you've done was you had some date, and then you would go back 50 days from that date. And that date was a significant date, and that's why we subtracted the 50. But now you're not doing that, right?
I'm not doing that. And that's why I don't know if I mentioned it off camera before we started, or if I mentioned near the beginning, that what we're going to see in this is the connection then to getting to the New Year of Trees, right? So what you find out is that if you count starting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so forth, from the 19th of December to the 6th of February is 50 days. And so, I was thinking, let me just look at something real quick. And so, you know what I'll say, since we're in it right now, this is, of course, the 50 days. And this is what we were talking about last year. Now, the question is, and it's a valid point that you were making, and this is why I brought it up at the beginning. If this is the count, which it is, because it is the circuit of the sun, it is his birth. So if we're looking at his birth, and the birth is the beginning of his 40 days, what do we know about these 40 days? Well, we also know it's tabernacles. So after the 7 days, on the 8th day is the time of his circumcision, and you got the other, 33 or whatever days it is, right? So it's connected to his birth. Well, what are some of the things, excuse me, that we know happens before his 40 days? Luke chapter 1, right? The 7th to the 8th day related to the wedding. Luke chapter 12 that says, Lord, when he returns from the wedding. We also have an important one to always remember, excuse me, because it's crystal clear in Isaiah 9, a light affliction that comes to the northern part of Israel. And after that light affliction, what happens? A great light comes in the darkness. So the great light comes in the darkness, and what are we told? For unto us a child is born. And he comes before what? The attack of Syria, which is the one at the 50th day at a year's end. Excuse me. So we can see that Jesus, as the Son of Man, being born, like Luke chapter 2, is connected to the beginning of the 40 days. And you know what? This is all of Isaiah 9 here is such a big deal to us. But you want to talk about a clue. That's why I have it highlighted in red. It's saying, for unto us a child is born. So if we had understood this earlier, which we didn't back in June, if we had seen this and understood this, we could have said, well, wait a second, we can't be looking for John's birth. We should be looking for the time of Jesus's birth. Because the time of his birth, which is connected to the 40 days at the time of his birth, comes after the first attack and before the second attack. So again, this is telling us that Jesus comes at the time of his birth after the first attack. So again, that puts the 50 days, the way we've understood it, coming back from the wedding, that if the bride escapes in this time frame, and that's the 7 days, and then he returns on the 8th day, this is why I'm saying the 14th. However, the issue in this is that if it's the 14th and you count 50 days to the New Year of Trees, well, it doesn't add up, right? Well, another thing doesn't add up. The other thing is, if you want to say that this is the beginning of the 50 when he comes as the Son of Man, and in the portion of John chapter 20, when he comes at the beginning of 50 and he breathes on the apostles and then leaves for the 7, returning on the 8th day, if that's it, well, it still doesn't line up with the count to the Festival of Trees. And this is why I was saying at the beginning, I believe more clarity is going to come over the next couple, 3-4 weeks, or whatever the case may be. We're going to get more and more clarity on this. And don't forget, this is something we have understood now for a long time, that this 7 to the 8th day, how does it play out within the 50? And so without being so technical, without just bogging myself down with saying, this is the escape day. No, this is the escape day. Or maybe, no, this is the escape day. I just said, forget it. From here to here is our escape day. Somewhere within this time frame is our escape day. I am more prone to believe it is this one, because in all of these places, Genesis 7, Luke chapter 1, Isaiah chapter 9, Luke chapter 9, in all of these places and in many more, Jesus's birth at the beginning of Tabernacles is connected to the 40 days starting. And just like Luke chapter 9 in verse 28, and it came to pass about in 8 days after these sayings. What were the sayings before it? That one place where the word company is used, which means those who get to recline at the upper room in the wedding. You see, very, very important to understand. So if this is his birth, I have so much trouble trying to believe this is the beginning of the 50. But again, in both cases, none of them equal the exact 50-day count. So there might be something more to the fact that Jesus was saying, look, they went up to this Jews' Feast of Tabernacles, and then he went up in secret. Now, if he goes up in secret, but he doesn't reveal himself till his birthday at True Tabernacles, the issue that I have, and it might just be that it's a typology, is that, okay, then this is the week of the wedding. But then why would he be here on the earth beginning his 40 days at that time? Because all of these things are telling us the 40 days connected to the period of his birth. So this is why I still have a tricky time trying to understand which day within this time, and which is why I say I'm not going to worry about it. It's within this period. So those are the things that we're talking about here in relation to seeing that timing. And this right here is another terrific example to show that at the time of his birth, when he comes, when he's now going to make himself known as the Son of Man, in that sense, as the Son of Man. And people, remember, people don't even know who he is. Some people say, oh, he's the Christ. Some people say he's a prophet. Some people say he's a liar. You see, there will be people who come to believe in him. And you're going to see these exact same things spoken about in John chapter 7. So we're seeing these connections, as I said, again, with Enoch and the 365. And Enoch, we know we want to be like the 11, like Enoch in Hebrews 11, being translated, and they're taken out. And it was at the time of snow, which connects to winter. I mean, all of these things are there connected to the 21st. But it seems more so that it's connected maybe to the group of workers in relation to being trained up. So it's in that time frame of these two places. And like I said, before we go back to John chapter 7, let me go and bring connection more to the other end of the story that you were just asking about, which is the 50 days. Because the 50 days from the beginning of the Jews' Feast of Tabernacles of Hanukkah, the beginning of the 50 brings us to the 50th day, which is the new year of trees. So what do we have in this? We would have it with Christ coming at the turn of the year. And what do we have in relation? Let's go look at that real quick, which will lead us into it. In relation to the, actually, let's go to Exodus. In relation to the turn of the year, we know this very well. Exodus 34:22, that it says, and thou shalt observe the feast of weeks, of the first fruits of the wheat harvest, and the feast of ingathering at the year's end. This is important for us to understand. You see, the feast of ingathering is tabernacles. So it's going to be observed at the year's end at the true Feast of Tabernacles. Well, what would that be? December 21st. So now we're seeing that it's going to be observed at the Feast of Tabernacles. Well, which portion of this first fruits is this talking about? I believe it's the workers. You see, so this observing of the first fruits of the wheat harvest, I believe connects to the workers. So just like we saw in with Enoch in his name with Hanukkah, it would have to take place during the time of Hanukkah, at the time of Jesus' birth of 40 days, which would be in the midst of Hanukkah, at the time of snow, which would be the beginning of winter, and the beginning of the 40 days of the Son of Man when he returns from the wedding. And why? In this case, well, because you got the first fruits, excuse me, which I believe relate to the worker group that remained, like we read in Luke 12, that remain when he returns from the wedding. So now again, it's directly connected to what? Well, this is connected to the Feast of Ingathering, remember 6:14. And isn't it interesting that it's 6 months and 14 days, which is the 14th day of the 7th month, which is the year's end, right? That day before, and then the circuit of the sun. So watch this. It has two meanings, right? We did a teaching on this. Tekufa or tekufa and tekufa. They look like they're the same, but there's a difference within them. And we've done a teaching on this in the past. And this is what I was saying at the beginning, that in the recent videos, when we were looking at it going to just the circuit of the sun, I was able to show that all 4 places where this word is used equaled the 50th day. Well, why was I able to show that it equaled 50 days? Because all of those connections equaled the year's end, or a year's end, which I was associating to the circuit of the sun. But we know, and we've taught, that there were 2 definitions. One is of the course of the sun, and the other is of a time lapse. So one relates to the circuit of the sun, which is the turn of the year of the sun, and the other one relates to a period of time, a lapse of time coming to an end. Now, can you say that about the sun? Well, no, for the sun, it's the turn, right? It's the turning of the year. So it's going to its farthest end and then it's returning back. But this other one is a lapse of time, which is an end. You see, the course of the sun, the circuit of the sun, excuse me, it is an end, but it's not the end of a period of time. But both of these relate to a period of an end reached before the turning, or an end within a period of time in the year. But there's 2 definitions. Well, we just saw that this one, you can't get around the Feast of Ingathering at the year's end. The Feast of Ingathering at the year's end is Tabernacles. Well, when we go to Psalms, which is one of the other places it's found, in Psalms 19, it says their line has gone out through all the earth, and their words unto the end of the world. In them he hath set a tabernacle for the sun, which is as a bridegroom coming out of his chamber, rejoicing as a strong man ready to run a race. His going forth is from one end of heaven, and his circuit, there it is, unto the ends of it. So his circuit. So the bridegroom's circuit. So he's being referenced here as the S-U-N in this typology. He is the bridegroom coming out of his chamber, which means he's been with his bride, and he's now rejoicing as a strong man, ready to go run his race. And he's being referred to as the S-U-N, which is at the tabernacle of the sun, which we now can prove is tabernacles. And he's going to what? His circuit is from one end to the other. And when is it? At the year's end, at the circuit of the sun, which is what? Tabernacles at the time of ingathering. So we can now see that Psalms 19 and Exodus 34, verse 22, are both directly related to the circuit of the sun, the S-U-N, which is December 21st at the winter solstice. But what about the other two, knowing that we have another definition? Because remember, there was a way that they all looked like they equaled 50 days. Well, what if we go look at it? One of the other ones was it First or Second Kings? Wait a second. No, Second Chronicles 24. And what was this one about? Second Chronicles 24, verse 23. And it came to pass at the end of the year that the host of Syria came up against them, right? Surrounded Jerusalem. Well, wait a second. This end of the year, which one is it? Is it the circuit of the sun, or is it something relating to a lapse of time? Well, there is nothing here that tells us tabernacles at ingathering, and there's nothing that relates it to the circuit of the sun. It's just told to us at the year's end, at an end of the year. Well, we know there's more than one end of the year in Judaism, right? And one of those, we've shared this not too long ago, there's 4 ends of the year. Okay? How many Jewish New Years? There are 4 New Years. One of them, of course, they have is Tishri. One is Shavat. And this is the one we're talking about. It's the New Year of Trees. Of course, they have another one, Nisan 1 and Elul, which we had been looking at earlier as well. So the New Year of Trees. This is something we've also been talking about in the past. And the reason it went to the back burner was because in the revelation of the stars and the moon and the sun with all the open books and the 70th year and everything, connecting them to the circuit of the sun, they all landed at the equivalent of the time of the circuit of the sun because of this November 1st connection and all of it being the circuit of the sun. However, this word tells us there are 2 forms of N. So 2 of them are related to the circuit of the sun, and 2 of them, as you're going to see, are related to something else that means a year's end. And what did we just show? What do we know about this one here? We know that the host of Syria that comes against them doesn't come against them till what? After the Son of Man, when the host of Syria comes against them and devours and destroys them. That is the end of 50 days, but it is clearly after the 40 days of the Son of Man, which was what? At the circuit of the sun, when he was a bridegroom coming from running his race and so forth, right? You see how it's all lining up? This is why I was saying it was so important that we needed the sun and the moon understanding to bring about this revelation that will make these things more clear, just like John chapter 7. The reason of him coming in the midst of the Jews' Feast of Tabernacles was because it was his birthday, and it was the 1 year anniversary where now he's coming to bring the light that was being hidden is now being revealed. That's what he does at the beginning of his 40 days. And we know it. We showed it all the way back to Genesis verse 3, when he became light. We showed it in John chapter 1, when first was the Word, and the Word became what? Light. John wasn't that light, but he came to bear witness of that light because John was spirit. You see, every piece, Luke chapter 11, the 40 days of the Son of Man, and he talks about being light. It's only in Luke after the story of Jonah. So where is this Syria connection? Well, it's the one that relates to the 50th day, which has to be another year end relating to a lapse of time. Hello.
So what you're saying is God is giving Jesus a really good birthday present this year.
That's right. That's right. He's gonna get his bride as an early birthday present, and then he's gonna come out as a strong man, pumped up, fired up, ready to come and bring his light to those that are lost, those that have fallen asleep, those who aren't diligently seeking, those who are caught up in the things of this world. But it's going to come at an ugly, ugly price. And I'm going to show you more. Oh, we still got some more to go. So in knowing this now, where's the other place that it shows up? In Samuel. Where was it? Do you guys remember that one? It's in Samuel. You guys remember? Somebody help me out here.
Yeah, 2 Samuel something. I'll find it.
Yeah, look up H8622. Oh, you know what? I think I might already have it pulled up. Yeah, I got it.
1 Samuel 20.
120. So in First Samuel 1 verse 20. And as you guys know, we taught on this not too long ago. And what do we see? We have Hannah, whose name in the Greek is the one for Anna. And we see Samuel, whose name comes from the root word of Simeon or Simon. And what do we know about that? Well, when we go to Luke chapter 2, we see the birth of Christ, which is the 40 days of the Son of Man. And who do we see at the end of it? We see, we see Simeon. Where is he? Where'd you go, Simeon? Simeon, who was waiting for the consolation. The Holy Ghost had revealed that he would not see death. So here we are, after the wedding, at the end of the 40 days of the Son of Man. There's Simeon, whose name comes from the same root word in the Hebrew as Samuel, which brings you to the same root word, Shimon, and brings you to 85. See, 80, 85, and it brings you to the same here intelligently. It's the same root word of the name for Samuel. And then Samuel's mother, whose name was Hannah, what do we see next after Simeon? In the exact same context of time, we have Anna in Luke 2:36, which comes from, of course, her name is only used once in the Greek, and her name comes from Hannah. So what did we just find out? We just found out that there are two that relate to the end of 50 days in a tekufa that relate to a period of a lapse of time, and two that relate to the circuit of the sun. So what is this other one? The circuit of the sun we've covered. It's the beginning of the 40 days of the Son of Man. But what about the year's end in relation to those that are the lapse of time that relate to the attack from Syria and that relate to the typology of Samuel and Anna, or Simeon and Anna? Well, it just so happens, as we saw, it relates to Tu B'Shavat. What is Tu B'Shavat? It's the new year. It's a year's end, and then the new year of trees. Now, why on earth would that have any relation in us needing to understand it also being a lapse of time, of a period of time coming to an end? What's the point? Why does that matter? I'm going to show you. Remember what we shared in this revelation here? That when Israel came into the land and we followed the count of the Shemitas, and 1948, 49, 49, 50, 50, 51, 51, 52. 4 years. And then the cycle was theirs to count from. So it's 3 years to the Lord, 3 years uncircumcised, they couldn't take from it. And the 4th year to the Lord, and from the 5th year forward was theirs. And it equals this year being 70, coming to an end. So we're still in it until that period comes. And so we've understood this 3 and 1. Well, let's go see where we have this 3 and 1 for the 4 years. The very first place we found it, and for anybody that's new, this is wild. This is one of the ways it was confirmed. You see this number right here? From the time of Christ's birth, there are 289 Sabbaths to this year that we're in. That is still the Sabbath, because we haven't really completed the year yet, according to the Lord God's count. There were 289 Sabbaths. So when I realized that in the count, I decided to go look up the Greek number 289. The Greek 289 only shows up one time in Scripture. And look at where it shows up. Starting in Luke 13, verse 6. He spake also this parable. A certain man had a fig tree planted in his vineyard, and he came and sought fruit thereon and found none. Then he said unto this dresser of the vineyard, the word 289 shows up one time, and the story that it's talking about is, check this. Behold, these 3 years I come seeking fruit on this fig tree and find none. Cut it down. Why cumbereth it the ground? And he answering said unto him, Lord, let it alone this year also, till I dig it about and dung it. And if it bear fruit, well, then it's okay, saying, right? And if not, then after that thou shalt cut it down. How many years? 3, and give it 1 more. 4 years. What was the revelation from the number of Sabbaths? 3, and then 1 more. What was the revelation of when they came into the land? 3, and then 1 more. Where did this take us to? Of course, it took us to a very famous one that we've been teaching on now for like almost 3 years, actually. And where did it take us to? Right here, Leviticus 19:23. And when you shall come into the land,
on a 2-1, Alvarez,
and shall have planted all manner of trees for food,
on a 2-1,
then shall you count the fruit thereof uncircumcised 3 years. Shall it be uncircumcised to you? It shall not be eaten. In the 4th year, all the fruit thereof shall be holy, to praise the Lord withal. And in the 5th year, you shall eat of it. What is it saying? 3 years, you can't touch it. The 4th year, you bring it to me. And the 5th year forward, it's now yours. Just so happened when Israel came into the land, they were establishing what their Shemitah cycles were. And they established they had 4 years left in the Shemitah cycle.
And it's really noting to tell that verse says nothing about the 6th or 7th year.
That's right.
Because it's beginning the next Shemitah.
That's right. It's beginning the next Shemitah. It's theirs to now start taking from that time forward. And so as we're seeing this, all of these things are talking about what? All manner of trees. Fig tree, all manner of trees. So what is this portion of time related to? This is all within the 50-day count, right? Right to the end of the 50-day count. What period of time is that still connected to? It's connected to Luke. right? Luke's portion is that 40, 50-day period of time. The bride's gone first. There's the worker group from the Luke, that first fruits group that is going to remain to work with the Lord, follow him, is going to receive the understanding, going to receive the anointing of the Holy Ghost on the 50th day, and then they're going to work during seals. So it's all connected to Luke, not Mark's time, or not Mark's people, and not Matthew's people. So let's go see if we can prove that out as well. Let's go to, actually, you know what? Let's start in Matthew. Let's go to the trumpets, and let's see what Matthew 24 says in relation to trees. He tells them the lesson of the fig tree in Matthew 24, verse 32. Now learn a parable of the fig tree. When his branch is yet tender and putteth forth leaves, you know that summer is nigh. It doesn't mean it has to happen in summer, by the way. It means that summer is near. It says, so likewise, when you see these things come to pass, it is at the door, this generation be fulfilled. What do we see here? The parable of the fig tree. And it says, his branch. We've done teachings on this a long time ago. Let's go to Mark's discourse. And remember, we're in the discourses. So this is prophetic end time stuff. So let's go to Mark's discourse. It says, now learn the parable of the fig tree when her branch. Interesting. Is that a typology? Or I mean, is it a typo or something? No. Well, now let's go see if we can prove that what we were talking about is connected to Luke's time. In Luke chapter 21, which is all about the period before nation against nation, kingdom against kingdom, which is what? Red Horse Rider. We know that he tells them in verse 10, then said he unto them, as if he was overhearing Mark and Matthew, nation shall rise against nation, kingdom against kingdom. There shall be great earthquakes, there shall be in diverse places, and famines and pestilence and fearful sights. He's talking about seals. And then he says in verse 12, but before all these. So before it officially kicks off Mark, Matthew's period of time of tribulation, there's this period of time that's going to take place first. They're going to deliver you up into prisons, into synagogues. See? This is all about that period of 40 to 50 days with the Son of Man. This is that warning period. We know that it even says there's no abomination of desolation in Luke. It says, and when you shall see Jerusalem compassed with armies. Well, we know that the first attack is in northern Israel and has nothing to do with Jerusalem. When is Jerusalem attacked and destroyed by armies? The one that comes at the year's end, which is a time frame of a year end, which would be the Festival of Trees. This is the compassing about by Syria. Well, guess what? Look at what we see next. In Luke 21, verse 29, the lesson of the fig tree. They title it, but they shouldn't have titled it just the lesson of the fig tree, because listen what it says. I'm going to prove to you. And he spake unto them a parable. Behold the fig tree, comma, and all the trees. What more has to be said? The fig tree and all the trees. We were just in Luke 13, where it showed that it was 3 years for the fig tree and then give it 1 more year. Then we went to Leviticus, and Leviticus said all the trees, when you come into the land and plant all trees, 3 years and 1 more year. And we showed when they came into the land, there was 4 more years left in the Shemitah cycle before it was theirs.
Well, the Astros
it's the exact same thing.
What
did Luke say? All the trees. Fig tree and all the trees.
They sealed the deal. They don't mess around.
It's connected to what? This is connected to the end of the 50 days, which is the end of Luke's portion of the entire storyline of his discourse.
And Darren says,
look at what it
Dad,
says
maybe you weren't supposed
in
to
verse
get that
33.
job.
At the
Maybe
end
you
of the
gotta be
story
patient
of the
to go
oops,
where
at the
you're
end of the
meant to
story
be.
of the
A week
parable
later,
of the
phone
fig tree, or
rang.
the
It
lesson
was
of the
the
fig
Houston
tree.
Astros.
Heaven
The
and
right
earth shall
man
pass away,
at the
but my
right
words
time
shall not pass
with the
away.
right team.
That exact same verse ends that portion in each of the Gospels discourses with the exact same wording. What do you think it's the end of? It's the end of Luke's portion, which is what? It's the end of 50
There goes
days.
the runner, fly ball
What's
down
the
the
time
right
of the end of the
field
50
line.
days?
Tucker comes on.
All the treats.
Kyle Tucker, this
Why do you think
time
Luke's the
he
only
gets
one
the
with
job.
all the treats?
The Houston Astros.
And it was 3 years plus 1. And then it was
Goes the runner,
theirs.
fly ball down the right field line.
And it just so
Tucker
happens
comes
that
on.
that time
Kyle
frame of 50
Tucker,
days, which is a
this
year's
time
end,
finishes
when the
the
second
job.
attack comes
The
after the
Houston
Son of Man from the
Astros,
time of his birth,
world
and it's
champions.
compassing about, which was what? The compassing about of Jerusalem? Hello. I don't know how it could be any other year. I have no clue. We know we are in the 70th year. It's so awesome. Let's go back now into
Alan, really
Yeah.
quick.
Yeah.
There's people talking about baseball noise, that someone on Zoom has baseball on, and I'm saying there's nothing going on. And people are saying,
I can't hear it.
No one hears any baseball noise, guys. So I don't know if it's
Maybe it's your
something-
neighbor.
Maybe. But everyone's saying, I can hear it, we can hear it. Who is it?
Well, I
Sounds
guess if
like-
nobody's talking, or when I'm talking, if nobody
Huh.
needs to jump in, just mute.
No, that's weird.
No, everyone's muted. I just went through the whole list.
Oh, okay.
And no one's got, like, I just unmuted myself and everybody keeps saying we think it's Mike. But I don't hear, I muted.
I don't
us
hear
and
from
listen
Mike's
on
either, but
YouTube. So
well, Mike can mute and then he can unmute when he jumps in.
Yeah, no,
I don't,
no,
How's that,
I
Mike?
don't hear anyone.
no. I think I was watching something with the baseball, looking at the thing, but it's like,
Busted.
but I don't know how it picked
That's
it up.
okay. Mike
Interesting.
knows this stuff. He's
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, I'm good. Don't worry about it.
So maybe just mute yours, or unless you're done.
I didn't hear anything, Mike. So
Yeah, I didn't hear it either.
I wasn't calling you out. But sorry.
All right, so we're getting close here. I'm gonna bring it in, and then I'm gonna give a nice little finale bow with it. So as we go back into John chapter 7, now that I got my heat nice and warm. As we go into chapter 7 again, there he is. We know that he is in the midst of the feast, and we know the time frame now. It says, and the Jews marveled, saying, how knoweth this man, never having learned? Jesus answered and said to them, my doctrine is not mine, but he that sent me. If any man will do his will, he shall know that the doctrine which it be of God, whether it be of God, or whether I speak of myself. He that speaketh of himself seeketh his own glory, but he that seeketh his glory that sent him, the same is true, and no unrighteousness is in him. Did not Moses give you the law, and yet none of you keepeth the law? Why do you go about to kill me? This gets really good. Verse 21, listen to this. Jesus answered and said unto them, I have done one work, and you all marvel. Remember I mentioned that earlier? You have done one work. I have done one work, and you are all marvel. What was that one work? Remember, because this is where he's starting to reveal himself, right? This is the beginning of his 40 days, the circuit of the sun. Verse 22, Moses therefore gave unto you circumcision, not because it is of Moses, but of the fathers, and you on the Sabbath day circumcise a man. If a man on the Sabbath day receives circumcision, that the law of Moses should not be broken, are you angry at me because I made a man every whit whole on the Sabbath? What did he say? I have done one work so far. Remember, prophetic eyes we're looking at. He shows up at the circuit of the sun at his birth, at the 40 days beginning. And he's saying, look, I've only done one work so far. And you guys want to crucify me? You want to beat me and kill me because of this one thing I've done? I've only done one thing. I made a man whole on the Sabbath day. What does the word mean? Healthy, well-bodied, sound. What did he do? He made his body whole. He's only performed one miracle at this time. What was it? The pre-trib escape. It's the end time eyes, right? On the Sabbath day. So again, they're accusing him of having done something on the Sabbath day. Well, if we go back to when that would have been, if he's coming on True Tabernacles, which is the 15th day, then what was the escape day? It was the 8th day of the month, the true 8th day of the month, which was what? A Sabbath. And they're angry with him because he made a man whole as the one thing that he's done that they're aware of, and he did it on the Sabbath. And they're angry at him in the midst of the Jews' Feast of Tabernacles. The prophetic connection is unbelievable. Judge not according to the appearance, but judge righteous judgment. Verse 27, howbeit we know, oh yeah, right here. Starting in 26, do the rulers know indeed that this is the very Christ? Question mark. Howbeit we know this man whence he is, but when Christ cometh, no man knoweth whence he is. Isn't that what everybody's going to be saying? Nobody knows where he came from. Nobody knows the day or hour. Nobody's going to know. How come this guy suddenly showed up? Because nobody knows he's coming for 40 days first. Then cried Jesus in the temple as he taught, saying, you both know me, and you know whence I am, and I am not come of myself. You see? You could see the prophetic in it. He's there on the first day being revealed to everybody, now being that light. There he is in Jerusalem at the time of the temple, and he's saying, look, I didn't come of my own will. My Father sent me. Yet we know he was already here for a year in the physical of what happened. But when he shows up and in the prophetic implication, he's saying, look, the Father just sent me. Is the typology of what's happening. But he that sent me is true, whom you know not. But I know him, for I am from him, and he hath sent me. It gets even more better. It gets even better. In verse 31, and many of the people believed on him, and said, when Christ cometh, he will he do more miracles than these which this man hath done? So we know people are going to believe on him, right? We know Jews are looking for the Messiah. So out of all peoples on the earth, when he comes for his 40 days, he's warning in Jerusalem first that they're going to be surrounded and attacked, and they're the ones looking for the Messiah. So out of all people on the earth, they're going to be some of the ones to believe first. Then it says, the Pharisees heard that the people murmured such things concerning him, and the Pharisees and the chief priests sent officers to take him. Then said Jesus unto them, yet a little while I am with you, and then I go unto him that sent me. You shall seek me, and you shall not find me, and where I am, thither you cannot come. Now, think of the prophetic implication again. He's only here for 40 days. When he said this, he had like 3.5 years to go. Doesn't that seem like a weird thing to say with 3.5 years to go? Hey, I'm only here for a little while, and then I'm gone, and where I go, you can't come. And they're like, oh my goodness, where is he going, right? They go on to say, then the Jews said among themselves, whither will he go, that we shall not find him? Will he go unto the dispersed among the Gentiles to teach the Gentiles? Yes, exactly. He's here for 3.5 years. He wasn't going anywhere so far that they couldn't find him. He was around for 3.5 years. But the prophetic implication is because he is only here for 40 days as the Son of Man. And he's telling them, look, then I'm going to return to my Father who sent me, and you guys can't go there. Well, remember, of course they can't. They're Jews. The Jews aren't going to the third heaven. And he's already made a man whole. He has already taken the escape group. Nobody can go to the third heaven where he's going. And then where's he going? They're like, what? What's he going to do? He's going to go among the Gentiles now that are dispersed everywhere? That's exactly what he's going to do. Because what's the end of Luke's discourse? You know, warning that Jerusalem is going to be compassed about and attacked. And then it says they're going to be tread upon and killed and so forth until the time of the Gentiles is over. What's the time of the end of Gentiles? The end of seals. So when he returns on Mount Zion, it's what? It's the end of the time of seals. Gentiles going up. It's so awesome. Man, there was even a few more things, but I won't go in. Oh, let me finish with this piece then in relation to John 7. They go in and they start accusing him, of course, of saying, does our law judge any man before it hear him, and know what he doeth? And they answered and said to him, art thou also of Galilee? Search and look, out of Galilee ariseth no prophet. And we've taught on this not too long ago as well. And we've taught on it before that there was a prophet who was born out of Galilee, and it was Jonah. And what did we share from Luke chapter 11? That Jesus would be as Jonah was a warning to Nineveh, so shall the Son of Man be in this generation. And he's being accused of being the fact that there was no prophet ever from Galilee, yet Jonah was that prophet. And in the very same place where we know he's coming to reveal himself to bring light, the very same story that is connected, that follows Luke 11, is Jesus talking about light. You don't hide the light. You don't put it under a basket. You let it shine its light everywhere for everybody to see. And in this same chapter, in chapter 7, he was being accused of doing everything in secret by his brothers, and it was time to go and make himself known. He says, I can't go yet. My time is not yet full come. And bang, when was his time full come? At the 1-year anniversary, his time was full come, and he's a light shining to the world. So now, as this is all coming to an end, let me bring this into the picture. And I was able to cover all that stuff. I didn't even look at those notes. Let me show you guys this. We talked about the book of Jasher, and that the time Enoch was taken was related to snow. Well, let me show you something else. One of our sisters, Patty, had shared something in relation to the book of Enoch. And this is just a little side note share. But in chapter 3 in the book of Enoch, it's another one of those 14s, right? Just kind of a cool share. But I'm gonna share something else. So observe and see how in the winter, all the trees seem as though they had withered and shed all their leaves, except 14 trees, which do not lose their foliage, but retain old foliage from 2 to 3 years till the new come. 14 is everywhere. 14 years, 14th day, 14thers, 14ers. It's everywhere, including the trees. And that's why I'm sharing it, because we're talking about the trees. Well, let me show you something else. This is awesome. This is the book of Enoch. It's a fragment from the book of Noah in chapter 60. Listen to this. In the year 500, in the 7th month, on the 14th day of the month, hello, in the life of Enoch, in the parable, I saw how a mighty quaking made the heaven of heavens to quake. And the host of the Most High and the angels, 1,000,000 and 10,000 times 10,000. We know that relation, right? That's Revelation 5. So there, I believe it's also not just the angels. We know that that's a typology to those that have been taken. And that's from Revelation 5 before it all begins, where we're disquieted with a great disquiet. And the head of days sat on the throne of his glory, and the angels, his righteous, stood around him. And a great trembling seized me, and fear took hold of me. And my loins gave way, and dissolved were my reins. And I fell upon my face. Let me see, I think this is... Fell upon my face. And Michael sent another angel from among the holy ones, and he raised me up. And when he had raised me up, my spirit returned, and I had not been able to endure the look of this host, and the commotion and the quaking of heaven. Do we have a connection to that? Let's go to Luke 21. Luke 21, and what do we read? In verse 25, and there shall be signs in the sun and in the moon and in the stars, hello, and upon the earth distress of nations, with perplexity, the seas and the waves roaring, men's hearts failing them for fear, for looking after those things which are coming upon the earth, for the powers of heaven shall be shaken. Remember what we've talked about recently? This coming of the Son of Man. I don't believe that this coming of the Son of Man is what the bride is going to see. I believe this coming of the Son of Man is related to the workers. I believe they're the ones that are going to see him at this point when he comes to begin his 40 days. And here's one of the reasons why we can show it a bit more. Because what are we talking about? When did this happen? 7th month, 14th day of the month. What's the 7th month, 14th day of the month? The 7th day. The 7th day. If this is the escape, there's your 7, and that's your 8th day. They're seeing this at the quaking and the shaking of the heavens. And who's coming? The Son of Man is coming. He sees this devastation happen on the true 7th month and 14th day of the month. Now listen to what it says. And the commotion and the quaking of the heaven. And Michael said unto me, why art thou disquieted with such a vision? Listen to this. Until this day lasted the day of his mercy. The Lord's mercy lasted until the 14th day of the 7th month. His mercy lasted until the 14th day of the 7th month. And in Luke, we see what's coming, what's falling, what's coming from above. And when they see this coming, it's the sign of the Son of Man coming. Do you see what it said? 7th month, 14th day of the month. And it was until this day that the Lord's mercy had endured. He hath been merciful and long suffering toward those who dwell on the earth. Hello. What if we go to Luke? Continue down. 34, Luke 21:34. And take heed to yourselves, lest at any time your hearts be overcharged with the suffering and drunkenness and cares of this life, so that that day come upon you unawares. For as a snare shall it come on all them that dwell on the face of the whole earth. It's the exact same day. And when the day and the power and the punishment and the judgment come, which the Lord of spirits hath prepared for those who worship not the righteous law, and for those who deny the righteous judgment, and for those who take his name in vain, that day is prepared. That what? That day is prepared. For the elect, a covenant. For the sinners, an inquisition. When the punishment of the Lord of spirits shall rest upon them, it shall rest in order that the punishment of the Lord of spirits may not come in vain, and it shall slay the children with their mothers and the children with their fathers. Sound familiar? Talks about it everywhere. But woe unto them that are with child, and to them that give suck in those days. For there shall be great distress in the land, and wrath upon this people, and they shall fall by the edge of the sword, and they shall be led away captive into all nations, and Jerusalem shall be trodden down of the Gentiles, until the time of the Gentiles be fulfilled, which is the portion at the end of the 40 days, when he goes unto what? The dispersed of the Gentiles, till the time of the end of the Gentiles be fulfilled. I don't know what else to tell you. It's all there.
Cool. Cool stuff.
Alan, I got a cool thing to add on to too. I learned last night, and I just did the count just now because I didn't know what our dates were.
Mhm.
So there's the 3 Jewish prophetic the prophecies talking about, the 2 Benjamins.
Mm-hmm.
So I forget I think it's the last one. It's the one that starts with a T, the TH. I can't remember. Forgive me. Maybe someone in the chat knows. But because I remember debating this with my mom last night, because it talks about how the 2 Benjamins, they won't be able to come up with a government.
Mhm.
And so it says the last one, the Sabbath after the
Mhm.
Messiah will show, but they have 42 days to establish a government, because they have
That's
28.
right.
They have 28, and they can ask for an additional
2-week
14.
extension, yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And those 42 days from the 1st, which is when the election happened,
Mhm.
is December 20th.
Ah.
Interesting.
And
And it wasn't known, it wasn't official till the 2nd, which would also bring it to the 21st.
And it literally says the Sabbath after will
That's
be
right.
the coming of the Messiah, and that's the one thing that we're waiting, because then it'll
Wow.
make
Because
everything,
the
all
5th,
those
the
prophecies
20,
not true.
that's right. The 21st of December is true Sabbath.
The tractate. I'm probably saying it wrong, but BB just said it in the.
Yeah, we were talking about
So-
the 28th. I didn't know about the 2-week extension. That
Yeah,
helps.
there's a 2-week extension, yeah.
That's interesting. That's pretty
And
awesome.
it literally says the Sabbath after will be the Messiah. The Messiah is coming.
Wow.
It's
Cool.
like, could it be any more perfect?
It's awesome, man. That is so awesome. That was something, yeah, I think I mentioned in the last video, or maybe the last live show with you guys, that I didn't, I've heard of that, of course, but I could never really follow, how do you get the Sabbath after? And, I thought initially you were going to go down the road and say, oh, we still have a possibility of next week, the Sabbath after. But
no, I
when you
want it so
understand,
bad. I want
mean,
it so bad, but hey, it's not
That's
my
right.
time.
And everybody's been wrong for 2,000 years. I get
Yeah.
that. But they don't have what we've been given. It's a process, and everything is built. So see, when I started this earlier, and I was saying how important it was that everything, Mark Scuderi, one of our brothers I talk to every week, he's been with us almost the whole 5 years. And he's like, every single time it builds. We don't come back with just the same old 5, 6, 7, 10 verses. It builds and it builds and it builds and it builds. There's always more revelation that becomes understood. And that's why this was so powerful, because in everything we have, I was like, Lord, how could this have not been it, Lord? And then John 7 comes to mind. I instantly thought of Ed, because I remember when Mike said, oh, but Ed's still thinking, man, it's got to count with John 7. And he was right. And that's what comes to my head. In all of these open books and in all of this stuff, we still couldn't connect John 7. Well, we have never understood John 7 completely like that before, because we never understood that true tabernacles at the birth of Christ was at the
Don't
winter
fill
solstice.
Ed's head anymore, okay? You're already saying too much stuff for Ed. Like, just,
We've had to hear it from Ed for the last.
I like,
6 months.
yeah, you guys are hearing it. I like bringing it up though. I love it.
No.
Good job, Ed.
You know,
Good job.
now when we look at this, and now that you've understood even the process of what we've been through the last few months with the 2 months off, the Taurus and the 2 months off, and then realizing the moon, without that, we couldn't have got this final piece of revelation of John. You see, we didn't have this last year. We couldn't figure out that connection because we didn't know what it really meant, him coming in the midst. How was him coming in the midst at that point have any connection to his birth, to what we now know in Isaiah as well? I mean, the connection wasn't there. So now to see it like this, 70th, it's a done deal. What day exactly? I don't know.
And we've said that before. It's a done deal. You know, we've heard it. You know, and every step of the way. I mean, anybody that's been watching and following along and studying and doing their own studies and, you know, comparing it for themselves and not just listening to us, but going behind us and reading and understanding, they see it too. So it's like, yes, this has to be it, right?
Yeah.
And you know, we're a little bit blinded to some things, right? But then more, like you said, always more understanding comes out. But at this particular junction, for everything that lines up with the 70, the Shemitah years, when they came into the land, there is no more. It's
there's
like
no more.
We've said there's no more a few times. Yep, guilty.
Yeah.
And we've been wrong. We're not ashamed to say we get it wrong, right?
That's right. We've never been thus saith the Lord.
Yeah,
it's okay.
It's just the understanding of where this 70 starts. You know, the calendars.
That's right.
But
that's right.
There is a time, and like this is it. Like we're out.
Both years end are connected to the understanding of the year's end. And without having understood that revelation that we talked about a year and a half, 2 years ago, we could have never built to the next step.
And it's like we can't go to the spring. We can't go to the summer solstice. No. You know, we can't go all the way back because then that throws off not only the fourth year to the Lord, the fifth year forward. That throws off the Deuteronomy verse count that's been perfect all the way up until the year that we were in. And then going into, you know, how can one chase, you know, 1,000, two chase 10,000?
Yeah,
it's that through. I mean, there's so many things that just fall apart. It's like it's impossible. So like I said, it goes back to that. It makes me think of that Edward Oldming. I know some of you guys have heard him, where he's always making the video December. You know, he's saying like there'll be a December where Christmas will be unrecognizable in America. You know, so hey, let's hope that's it. Yeah.
It's beautiful though with 7 too, because first of all, like going back to what we've learned with the feasts and Hebrew just traditions and like the preparing of the bride, like I really feel like we gained such momentum like back this time last year. Like that's really when I joined the ministry too. And we've talked about, you know, preparing the bride for her bridegroom to come for a whole year, right? It's very really like die set on what was like this time last year. And then you look at like John 6 and you see like right now, you know, the Hanukkah and the murmuring of the Jews, like talking about like what's going on with them. So you see in John 6 the murmuring of the Jews, and then you see the great falling away. Like you've literally got many disciples fall away, and like it's all a disputed division over Christ. And it's like you just see it unfolding, and then you have the adulterous woman forgiven like right after. It's like you can't dispute 7. And with everything, like you said, just falling into place, it's just like it's only can be orchestrated by Christ or by our Christ, our Creator.
That's right.
Just
and that's the thing. So when we were talking about it all, and when I was screaming out to the Lord and saying, "Look, with everything, Lord, I know we haven't missed it. How is it possible?" John 7. Now John 7 is literally in the midst of all of it. I don't know what else. You know, in fact, let me share this real quick. I forgot about this part, Mike. Let's go into Numbers.
Oh yeah.
In the book of Numbers, Numbers chapter 7 is what? Setting up of the tabernacle. But the setting up of the tabernacle, we know it's that 7-day thing, but we see that it relates to the 12 tribes. And so one of our sisters, when we spoke about this last year, I didn't realize that the 12 days of Christmas were after Christmas. So in this case, they're not relating to after Christmas. We're looking at this as these quote unquote 12 days, but it's talking about the 12 tribes. And so look what happens. If we're counting from the 14th, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So we've got 12 days to Christmas, which, by the way, one of the reasons in relation to Christ, because historically, like I said, in the debate as to when John was born and when Christ was born, we can now prove them by combining it together in the Revelation. But the group that was always on the side of John at the solstice and Jesus at the solstice time frame is when you go and read about the solstice in the circuit of the sun there, you find out that this sun god worship and what they were doing, but at the circuit of the sun at the year's end of the circuit of the sun, at the winter solstice, the sun goes down low and it's not seen as moving. It seems like it's staying there for 3 days. It doesn't rise till the 3rd day. And that was the reasons from the 22nd, 23rd, 24th, and it's the evening of the 24th, which is one of the reasons they've gone with December 25th in relation to his birth. So it's not that that understanding was all that far off, but it was just to sun god worship. But what happens now is if we look at these 12 days and we consider them as the 12 tribes, we might be seeing, again, more connection to the fact that it's day 1, which is day 1 of the 50. So again, I'm more heavily leaning to this being the escape and the start of 50 days. Again, we've got a time frame of that 1 week. But as we go to Luke, Numbers chapter 7, we're going to see this 12 days. We've talked about it before in relation to the 8th day, but now we're going to look at it not as the 12 days after, but the 12 days leading up. Why? Because Hanukkah is now in the right place, just like 29 AD. So watch what happens. There's the 12 days for each tribe. And what's it called? The dedication. What's the dedication? Hanukkah. What's Hanukkah? Initiation, dedicate, which comes from what? Same thing as Enoch. Okay? So again, it's the same time frame. And we have the 1st day, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th. And if you guys remember in the past, one of the connections that we were looking at possibly connected here was the fact that Numbers chapter 7, verse 54 almost seemed like it could be a continuation from John 7, verse 53, which was in relation to the 8th day. So we followed it here, and in Numbers 7, verse 54, as if a continuation from John chapter 7, which ends in verse 53, it starts with on the 8th day. Kind of interesting, right? So what do we know about this 8th day? Well, in this case, this 8th day is connected to what? Well, we'd be looking at it in relation to the 12 tribes, and the 8th day would be when Jesus showed up in the midst of the feast. When Jesus shows up in the midst of the feast, what do we see about Enoch related to 365, which is the year's end, which would be what? Reward. And what do we see here on the 8th day? Gamil, which means reward of God. And who's the reward of God? Is the rock that is God has ransom. So again, here's this connection on the 8th day when the Son of Man is coming, and it says has ransom, and it's the reward as Enoch. What's it talking about? During the time of the dedication, which is Hanukkah. So all connected to the same time frame. But if this is what if you guys remember earlier when I was saying about Enoch and that those who were rewarded for diligently seeking, it made me think of the possibility that, does the bride maybe go on the 21st, which was this conversation we've been having, on the first day or on the after 7 on the 8th day. So what if we go back to day 1 and see what it tells us about the names related to day 1? So in Numbers chapter 7, verse 12, it says, then offer the first day was Nahshon. Now, this guy doesn't have a good name. This guy's name means enchanter, which means to hiss, like the Nakash, magic spell. So just like Lucifer, right? Or Satan in the garden. But we have the other name. And the other name is this one here, Aminadab. And listen to what this guy's name is. This guy's name is also on the first day. And listen to what his name is. His name is People of Liberty. And People of Liberty comes from one of the root words, which means to present spontaneously, offer freely, willingly. So there's a
volunteer as a soldier.
Volunteer, yeah. To volunteer could also be as a soldier. To present spontaneously, offer freely. Hello. What's that sound like? Like a free will offering, right? What do we know within this free will offering, which is the pre-trib Bride of Christ group? We know a group is taken, and from them, a group is remaining, and they would be what? Soldiers. So a lot of people wondered, oh, if the Lord asks me, am I able to say, Lord, I would really rather go to the third heaven? Well, maybe so, to volunteer as a soldier. So maybe it is possible. Well, what does this remind us of? Deuteronomy chapter 16. What happens from those of the Feast of Weeks when you put the sickle to the corn? Verse 10, and thou shalt keep the Feast of Weeks unto the Lord thy God with a tribute of a free will offering. The word tribute is only used one time. It's in abundance, and it's what? Liberally being given. And it's a free will offering, which is spontaneous, freely, voluntarily, and comes from the word, spontaneously presented free will.
Now look at that. Volunteer as a soldier, right? Go to Luke. And this word's only used in Luke, and even though it's used several times, but go to Luke 5:5. This is Jesus calls his first disciples. And Simon answering said unto him, Master, we have toiled all night, and we have taken in nothing. Nevertheless, at thy word, I will let down. So if there's a training up, if there's a volunteering as soldier, why is that word master only used in Luke? Look what it says. As a commander or a teacher. So a commander commands soldiers, and they're being trained up. And that's only used in Luke. And it's when he calls his first disciples. Boom!
That's right.
Just kidding.
It's when he calls his first disciples. And what is he teaching them to do? This is only found in Luke. In verse 6. And when they had done this, they enclosed a great multitude of fish, and their net break. Now, what are they being trained up to do? During seals, they're working to what?
How to catch fish.
Bring in the great multitude.
Yep.
They're going to be taught to be fishers of men, and they're bringing in a great multitude. When does the great multitude come in? You guessed it, in Revelation chapter 7, in the 7th year of seals, when the great multitude which no man could number. So awesome. I'm telling you, it's so exciting to understand the open books, the Gospels, the 14 years, the 21, the big picture, the fractals. I mean, dude, it's awesome.
Yep.
Dudettes.
Hey, Alan, also too, remember Zechariah when we're talking about our chapter to years, in chapter 1 of Zechariah, it talks about in the 11th month on the 24th day, the red horse rider appears. And that's
Yeah.
right after our people are talking about when Trib
Oh,
would start.
yeah. So
So
tribulation, I was going to say. So tribulation, I think we would start as soon as Jesus starts his 40 days, because he would be that white horse rider. So now the red horse rider does not go out until the 40 days you would see commenced, right? So you have that still, but tribulation would officially started when the snare hit, right? That would be the judgment.
That's right.
Tribulation started, but red horse rider time frame is like prolonged. This is like another grace period God's given, even though he's taken away grace, right? He's still given this 40-day grace period. But that's why you would see
Yeah.
John in Revelation 4 called up, and he, let me show you the things hereafter. But it's like they're standing on the sea of glass, and this sea of glass is a representation of those that are brought up. And you'll notice the next time in Revelation, the sea of glass is mentioned. It's mingled with fire, and those are the tribulation saints. So it's two different seas of glass you're seeing. But he's up there to witness the Lamb pop the first seal. So if the bride's already gone before that first seal's popped, therein lies might be also that 7-day wedding as well that we're seeing there. So
That's right. And we talked about this, Mike, as well the other day, where what's interesting in this is the nation against nation, kingdom against kingdom. Mike, I think you need to mute.
Let me see, who is it? Let me just mute some people. All right, we're good.
There we go. We talked about how, well, first of all, we know that the red horse riders, when nation against nation starts, that's when Syria attacks Jerusalem and they're dispersed. And we know that they're gone for 7 years, right? So we know that's really the beginning of the 14 years. And so I've talked about this several times where, yes, it's the beginning of tribulation does start at the pre-trib escape, and in particular the 40 days of the Son of Man. I mean, it's going to be chaos, right? It's going to be as it was in the days of Noah in relation to those 40 days while the Son of Man is here. It's going to be chaos. And that's exactly what you see in the book of Enoch there when we were reading about that his legs were all limp and he just couldn't stand and his spirit was leaving him because what he was witnessing was just so terrifying. When nation starts, that's when, another one, right? Syria. And so what happens is they're witnessing this quaking of the heavens and this stuff that's happening, which is the beginning time of the 40 days. So when it comes to the 40 days, we know the Son of Man is the white horse rider. It's part of the seals, yet it's not the 14 years. And that's where I've talked about this in the past. Is it technically tribulation starting? Yeah, definitely. Tens of millions of people have vanished. The world is going to be freaking out. And then seeing whatever's coming from heaven, the world is going to start to be a little bit chaotic. And the Son of Man is here for 40 days warning and so forth. So it is going to be chaotic and it is tribulation. But when we talk about it, the real 14 years, or the 7 and the 7, if you will, don't start until the red horse rider, which is at the 50th day. Because the Son of Man, yet the Son of Man is part of the seals, you see? So it's still technically tribulation, but it's not the beginning of the 50 days. Yet it's tribulation because it's Luke's discourse. Luke's discourse is the time of the white horse rider as well. So it is that tribulation time, but the actual war part beginning is the red horse rider and nation against nation kill one another and everything else. In Zechariah 1, there was another piece too that I had that I was going to share. Even in relation to when we read that it would be the Lord's wrath, even reading it from the book of Enoch there, and we read it in Luke and in every other place, this is the beginning of his wrath. And we've talked about this in the past, Mike, and this is a really good point to make. In verse 12, which says, how long will thou not have mercy on Jerusalem? He's talking about his land. and on the cities of Judah, against which you have had indignation these 70 years. Which means it still has to be, in the Lord God's eyes, technically 70 years until that time of the attack. So it looks like the count of the official year's end of the Lord God, which is the New Year of Trees, which is all connected to the trees we were talking about, is still the 70 years. Because it's when the 70 is over that the 14 years begins. And when does it begin? When Jerusalem is attacked the second time at the 50th, and then they're removed for 7 years. It's the 7 years of seals. They got to be removed from the land. And then you've got the 7 years of trumpets. And what's interesting about this that we talked about in the past is when Jesus came, how was this fulfilled in Christ? Right? People say, oh, well, it was fulfilled in... No, it wasn't. They'll say because Jerusalem was attacked and destroyed in 70 AD. But they were in Jerusalem and in the land for like 300 to 400 years. So why would he say these 70 years since they've been in the land and he's been upset with them? Doesn't make any sense. Because they were in there for 300-400 years. It's only when they came back into the land. And the same thing applies, like we showed with Psalms 90 and 10, right? The same thing applies with Psalms 90 and 10, 70 to 80, then a short period of time, then we fly away, which is 3.5 years. That's a total of 14 years.
Yeah.
So it's not until they're destroyed in Jerusalem and Luke's discourse ends. Here, I'll stop my share. There we go.
We got Yanni.
Now we can see everybody that's in there.
Hello,
There we
Alan.
go.
Oh, we
Hello,
got
Alan. Hello,
John Van
Mike.
Horn. Hello, John.
Hey,
How you
guys.
doing?
I don't see Mike. He's hiding somewhere.
Hiding.
Yeah, I'm hiding.
Hiding.
I'm looking forward to Mike's decoding Alan video.
I'm recovering from my sinus infection. It was a doozy.
Oh, fair enough.
Yeah.
Mike, you sound sick.
I know I'm
I
recovering.
mean, you really sound sick. Quit talking. Laugh out loud.
Yeah, I know. Well, it's good to see you guys.
What you
We've
got, Yanni?
We got some other people in here. We got Kevin Hurd. Got Jan Brown. Hey, guys. BB.
Hi, Taylor.
Hi, John.
You guys are so beautiful. Even Alan.
That's what my wife tells me, so that's good.
Yeah.
He's got that 50-year growth.
We got
It'll be 22 years. Our wedding anniversary is on November 18th.
Is it the 50-year glow or the 60? It was the 50. My bad. Yeah, the 50.
50-year growth.
So see, I'm 50. We've been married 22 years.
Nice.
All the numbers.
These biblical number connections. Yeah.
Well, I was saved when I was 33. Now it's been 3 years. No, I'm just kidding.
You're
Yan-
such a puppy, Mikey.
And Yanni is the next Steve Fletcher, evidently now. I saw Brian call Yanni Fletcher in the chat.
Alan,
Crazy
we thought your revelation would be 11:11, but it was 12:12. It's okay. It's 1 month off.
No,
Yanni,
it's
it's
12:21.
it's gonna be okay, Yanni. God will be with you.
Yeah.
It's 12:21. Yeah, 1, 2, 2, 1.
Yeah, close, Yanni.
It's a perfect
Close.
reflection.
But in reality,
Alan?
it'll be 7:14. Yeah.
Alan, I've been begging everybody to. I came up with this a couple days ago, and I was like, tell Alan before he comes out with the next video, just in case. And Yanni's like, we got to take the first date, John.
Yep.
That's Mike's policy, not mine.
No. Alan has no shame in letting you know that your date's wrong. No, I'm just kidding. But I'm really not. But he's like, no. Now, yes,
I'm
absolutely.
always happy to see to be
Yes.
looking earlier. We're looking every day,
exactly,
right?
Yeah. I mean,
That's the other
This
thing,
this ministry is not about looking for a date. It's looking for the truth.
That's right.
yeah. And if it
And
happens
the-
to be the 8th, 7th, or the 8th of November or the 11th, we'll take it.
That's right.
Absolutely. Somebody did mention in the chat that the dollar is supposed to stop December 13th. So wouldn't that
Well,
be
I remember the
interesting
dollar was
timing?
supposed to stop and everything was going to crash October 24th too, right? So,
No, I
Yeah,
think they
we'll
were
see.
saying like the cryptocurrency's coming out, right? The digital currency in December. I
oh,
don't
the new
remember.
digital
Maybe.
currency.
Yeah, I don't remember.
Yeah, not
I just thought
quite
that was
yet.
interesting.
We know none of that stuff
Go-
is officially going to happen until the tribulation.
John's got his hand raised. Go ahead, John. Yep, go ahead.
Alan, you said you pointed out one of the scriptures in the last videos that said that we were not to fall off. I mean, you emphasized on it. You know that the time was that we're close. That we know the time frame that we're in to not fall off. And that scripture resonates so much. We're regardless of what we see at the moment and what it actually becomes, we are close and we cannot fall off. All of you, I encourage you, I strengthen you. I don't stay strong. Stay strong in the Lord. He's got this. We got this.
Read Hebrews.
Amen. Amen.
That's right.
Read Hebrews.
Amen, John.
Encourage your spirit.
Yeah.
Yes, and it's gonna feel like it was once we're there, it'll feel like all that
Nothing.
went like blip. You know what I mean?
That's
So,
right.
A short time.
Yeah.
It'll
A
be a
hiccup.
blip and it'll be as nothing compared to what we will receive for what we had to endure.
Yeah.
Imagine
You
those
know,
words.
it's
Well
one
done.
thing. It's one thing for us to say it in our lives. You know, yeah, we have ups and downs and there are very difficult times and we've all had our moments, but there are people in this world that are living horrific periods of time in their life. I mean, like we couldn't even comprehend, that are going to be there. And even for them, it will be as if it was nothing in comparison. So, you know, it's one thing
Praise
for us
God.
to say it, but imagine them being also able to say it, because Paul wasn't just talking to a small group. He was talking to everybody.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't want to live what a lot of people are. And I'm so thankful that we've been blessed to have what we have for all of us. But there's a lot who don't have anything close. And even they will say
They
it was
are the
all
examples we
worth it
follow.
and beyond. That's right.
Yeah, they're the examples we follow.
Yeah. Exciting
Love
times,
you
man.
guys.
Love you too, brother.
So, what do we got? You want to keep
Yanni,
going for a
what
little
you got?
bit?
Yanni, what do you? Yanni,
Or do you
got
want
something.
to, unless you want to just close it off now and then just keep the chat going?
I don't know if
Is there any questions? Final ones in the chat?
Yeah, any questions maybe? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, or they want to. Yeah, if y'all want to keep asking questions, keep us on longer. Otherwise, we could just go to Zoom.
I can do just a quick screen share on faith. It's come up a couple of times this week. People thinking that they can just have faith and it's theirs. And I've just shown before that if you look in Strong's, if I could share my screen, can I do that?
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, Mike
You
would
can
have
share.
to do that.
He should be able to share. Go ahead.
All right.
Do you know how, Alan? Okay, yeah, there you go.
How's that?
That's
All
more,
right.
yeah.
Yeah. So you can,
there you go.
as you can see there, you come to this bit here. It's always a gift from God and never something that can be produced by people, in short. God's divine persuasion and therefore distinct from human belief or confidence. So yet knowing it, the Lord continuously births faith in the yielded believer so that they can know what he prefers, the persuasion of his will. And if you come down a bit further to here, a bit better description. Faith and belief are not exactly the same. Faith always comes from God and involves his revelations. Therefore, faith is beyond belief. Faith is God's work. Faith is never the work of people. We cannot produce faith ourselves, nor can we drum it up at will. Rather, faith comes from Christ, speaks his word within. So yeah, that's basically it. So when you have a look in what is it in Hebrews there, and you see you can only please God, with when you have faith. That's why, because it comes from him. It's pure, it's holy. So that's why it's that's the
right.
way you.
It's the same thing we get in John 6, right? In John 6:44, and Jesus is saying, no man can come to me except the Father which hath sent me draw him, and I will raise him up the last day. Right? So it's exactly what you're saying. There's, we think we come to faith, but really it's the Father that says so to bring us to faith.
It's a gift.
644 is John 644 is bigger than anyone realizes. It also shows that repentance actually comes from God. He makes you repent to turn to him. So you can't come to the Father unless he draws you.
That's right.
Which means he initiates it. So you're actually repenting as well. And then I think the faith thing is a bit later. When he gives you that, it's an actual proper gift. It's wonderful.
That's why it's
right.
That.
Yeah, that explains the free gift.
Yeah, it's a gift from God. Faith is a gift from God. So that's what we were talking about earlier when it says you receive the end of your faith, because God gives us our faith, right? So we have this faith to continue to keep on doing what we're doing, and in hope, and earnest expectation of what's to come. But there will come a moment where we reach the end of that faith. That's why it says in that one scripture, we see in a glass, darkly lit, right? Not saying, and I hate when some people take that out of context and they're like, oh, well, this is why you could prophesy and get it wrong. You're okay because we understand it. No, God's saying when you prophesy in part, it's like saying Elijah would say something, and that was truth what he said. That came to pass, but we don't see the bigger picture of it yet. But there will come a time where prophecy and languages and all this will go away, because we're going to have perfect understanding, and we'll understand it because he will give it to us and reveal himself in full to us. So therefore you will have reached the end of your faith, right? Because you now know, and you're standing before God. It's before God. That's why you can't say God has faith. God does not have faith. He already knows everything, right? So to say God has faith is to say he doesn't know something. So that's what we mean by in 1 Peter when it says to reach the end of your faith, is like you will now officially know.
God is faith manifested. It's like going back to what Mark is sharing in Hebrews. I just pulled it up, and I thought it was funny because you have Hebrews 11:1. Now faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. But the title of that chapter is Faith Before the Flood. And what are we experiencing right now? It's like by faith.
Yeah.
And that flood's coming. You just have to have trust in that.
That's right.
Unless you're Yanni.
So we stop guessing, Taylor. We stop guessing, right? We know.
Prayerfully, come on. If that prophecy doesn't come true, then everything. There's so much that's just.
Everybody that hears my voice right now, send a snowball to Alan and hit him with it. Right?
We're already covered in snow, man. I won't even see it.
Just stay in the shower. Just stay in there.
Well,
I think we're good now, man.
Yep.
This faith will be used for the Jews, which the Jews always need signs and miracles. So our faith, when that happens, it'll be a miracle, and that's the sign that the Jews need. So
I'll be talking more about that in an upcoming video now that we've got a little time.
Yeah. Prayerfully not.
Another one.
It'll go by so quick.
Yeah, prayerfully not.
It'll go by quick, actually. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, prayerfully not, but if so, it'll pass by quickly.
Yeah.
I think we were here last year in the first 6 months of this year. We weren't looking at a specific time because